It's all
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Great to have you. I'll just start recording right off the bat because I like the initial conversation as soon as we get started.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I appreciate your
I'm just
time
trying.
today. Um, James
No problem, man.
Christianson, How I Got Custody, and also Father's Rights and Resources. So on Instagram and YouTube. Um, and the flow page, we'll talk about it a lot. I want to talk about it a lot here and all his information, but it's
Okay.
flow.page/fathers rights. And James's links will be pinned in the comments under this YouTube video when it's published, James. And then I got your website pulled up on another computer here, and then I can share the screen and we'll go over it here. But thanks for being here. I'm very interested in everything you have to say. There's a lot of tough love that comes with your message, and I'm able to keep listening. I know that some people will be turned off, but I'm able to keep listening. It is important to me. James has been doing this for a long time. Got full custody of his daughter, I think at 7 months old, and she's lived with you all the way up until 23.
Yes.
And and James started doing this when there was no internet really I mean, there's some internet, but there wasn't really social media, a ton of resources, people speaking out. He had to go and put a much harder work than we do right now to figure out how to protect his rights and protect his child. And he got full custody. And even though he did, he's still been a voice telling people to fight, telling fathers, go fight for your rights, stop sitting around. You have more, it's easier and easier and easier now to find links, to find information, to find people like James. So I want to promote today and get some help. So James, anything you want to say to get started? And I look forward to a conversation with you today.
Well, you said I do a lot of tough love. I promise to be nice. This is your podcast. I'm going to be respectful. It's not my domain. It's your domain. But I'll answer and put as much information out there as I can, as long as you want to let me blab. But
Yeah.
everything you said is on point. So I'm accurate so far. So uh, one of the biggest things that people don't realize, because they're so overwhelmed emotionally by the court system, that usually blindsides you, usually traumatizes you, and has you almost in like a military guy who gets bombed and watches his best buddies die. You're in the middle of trauma and you got to keep fighting and moving forward. That's kind of what I like in this actual war too. And when you're in a battle, you know your life is on the line. You know, despite all the trauma, you got to move forward. And that was my mentality going into it. I was going to fight for my daughter no matter what. And a lot of the things that I learned and was just because of my mentality. I was going to fight even if I lost until my daughter was 18, so I could face her and say, and she could never say, "Where were you? Why didn't you try and be in my life?" You know, that was one thing that, uh, paranoid me aside, from my spiritual belief of standing before God and giving an account of my life. It was also seeing my daughter's face and her saying, if I never got it, because the first couple of months, I talked so much smack about how I wanted stuff. Some people don't realize I didn't see my daughter for 40 days straight, lived 3 blocks from the mother. And I was in court for like 2.5 months, plugging away and churning away. And I went through hell. So, wherever you want to go with that is fine with me.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a great introduction and story and some background. What I've seen James, I actually discovered James at I actually just noticed in our text messages, I went to go actually save your number in my phone and I saw that I texted you. It was 2024. I thought it was earlier than that, but I had already got my ass kicked in court real bad for a
Yeah.
long time leading up to that. And 2011, 2012, I wasn't even on social media. I wasn't aware of like, okay, where's other fathers at? What am I going to do? I was fighting in court. I was filling out paperwork. I was responding to stuff. I was basically responding to filings coming my way. I was 22 years old, 2011, 2012 for 2011, 2012, 2013, back in court again 2015 multiple times, back in 2016, 2018. And in 2018, after just getting wrecked and being cooperative, and I went through false allegations of domestic violence in 2012. And part of the message I've seen you say is don't bend over and just be so cooperative and accept every other weekend or not seeing your kids. Go fight and fight for full custody if you need to, or 50-50 at minimum. And I had nobody. My father passed away. I was 16. I had my child 4 years later at the age of 20. And I didn't even know what the term domestic violence was. I didn't know what family court really meant. I didn't know how serious it was being accused of domestic violence or getting a domestic violence restraining order, the eggshells and how dangerous that document really is for dads. And you're stepping on thin ice. And so I would respond. I'd show up to court. I'd go fight. I'd argue for myself. I had no money for an attorney. 2015, I got one just for a little $2,000. Friend loaned to me, and I showed up with one. My ex never had one up to this point. That's how easy it was in court to just go say whatever you want. I didn't know how to even object to anything. Court takes it at face value. Rex dads. I showed up with an attorney, and my attorney started wrecking her real quick, like, oh, lack of foundation, and just shut her down. Got me back
Wow.
pretty much majority time for about 5 months, and then child appointed attorney, other attorney drowned me out of money. It's a copy paste system. 5 months later, the other attorney was threatening me in the hallway, saying, if you don't comply with going back to what we already had every other weekend and every other weekday visit, we're going to make it worse. And I got scared of that, and I said, okay, fine. And we took that to 2015. And then 2018, that's when I started getting sick and tired of the order never being followed for 2012 to 2011 to 2018, never being followed. I'd show up outside, either play games, waiting 20 minutes, waiting 30 minutes, even 15 minutes, or just no show, or a text to say your daughter's somewhere else, even though this is a pickup point. I got sick of it. I started figuring out how to file for contempt. My kid's mom went through multiple relationships, and at this point, a new boyfriend meant he didn't know who I was and I'd been in my kid's life. She started feeding him. He's never been here. He just shows up, and he's only going to be here to use, which is a crazy term, use the court order to harass me, to actually show up to pick up my child, and then I was accused of being violent, right? And I want to speed through this as
Yeah.
fast as I can. But I
Okay.
want to share that this is where I got sick of it, and I started saying, okay, I'd never called the police before, other than ask them to come help at some of the pickups. But this time I was like, I'm getting every single time. I'm going to bug the police every day, as worthless as we're probably going to share with us that is. And then I started saying, I'm filing for contempt. And I did. I filed for 220 counts in 2020 in the middle of a long trial we're waiting for, all dismissed. Represented myself through the whole thing. And so that's when I really started fighting really hard as much as I could. And I took sanctions in there several times. And even right now, it's like after being beat through the system, I have to consider, for a few other complex reasons, so I got to file contempt again, because in my case, I'm still watching contempt still take place, even though I have nothing left. When moms know how to behave like this and they're kind of rewarded for it, even if they see a weakness in dad, which James is going to get into with us, that they'll just keep taking advantage and taking everything you got. So fighting is very important to me. I'm so far through my story, even with contempt right now. Even if that went through, my oldest would kind of be without a place to live, and there's a lot of severe alienation now between us. So I don't know that I would want to leave her in that position. So that's very difficult. But there's a lot of guys going through it that need help, and that's why I brought James in today. I'm building a platform with a new strategy. I've failed it several times. We need resources for guys to talk to who know what they're talking about. They may not come off so nice. Some people will see James and think, I don't know if I want to talk to him. He doesn't. I think you need to be 100% nice all the time. There's a lot of big feelings here. This has to do with child abuse. As I was just watching one of your most famous videos on your YouTube, it's like 100,000 views. One of your older ones is kids need air and food and water. What do they need after that? Both parents in their life. So it comes down to child abuse when kids aren't seeing their parents.
Right.
So I want this resource. As much controversy as you'll see, like on James's page and even on mine at times, I'm pushing through it in ways that I can. James is making his own decisions, but I still see that he's valuable. I want to send fathers to him. I've already started to do that. I've got groups. I've got a following that's growing extremely fast. So
Thank
this
you
is
for
a
that.
place, yeah, this is a place that that we can learn a lot more about James directly, face to face, most recent interview, links, resources, how to consult with James, how to contact him, that you need to step forward and contact James. He can't go out and just find you. You know, don't
Right.
message James and say, hey, call me or email me. You need to tell him who you are, click on his links and contact him properly. Let him know who you are, what's going on, and there's a consultation fee. I think I don't know if it's changed over the years. I saw like at least minimum is $60 an hour, which is like the cheapest you're going to see anywhere, and probably the best help
It's
you're gonna.
it's actually 80 now, but there's some old videos that I
Okay,
overlooked and missed on my YouTube channel that say that, and
it's
now
okay.
I stopped doing that. I keep it in my flow page, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
still cheaper than anybody else for the most part, to be honest with you.
So I know I'm getting long-winded here in this, but I watch a lot of James's content, and especially I've been really getting into the past several like 48 hours to get ready for an interview and see James' vocabulary, what he pushes a lot the most as far as contacting him, as far as fathers need to stop sitting around. And I understand it's difficult, but we do have a responsibility. You can't, and especially 22 years old. Hey, make the decision. I'm not going to maybe go out and like drink this weekend, even if it's just a couple beers and try to forget about everything. You don't need to do it 24/7. You need breaks, but you also need to buckle down and
Right.
say, hey, I'm going to pay attention to this information. I'm going to learn it myself because lawyers are screwing people over backwards. And James is a good resource. That's what I see. That's why I have James here. If there's anything you want to jump in with some of that information, James.
I mean, I literally could talk all day on every single subject that you talked about, but um, I would. Is there anything particular you want me to hit, or do you want me to just go with what the stuff I
Here,
want to talk about?
let me guide us a little bit on
Okay.
flow.page/fathers rights. Excuse me. This link is pinned. Well, it's just like YouTube has links available. It's the top first link you can reach on YouTube, Fathers Rights and Resources, or it's youtube.com/at how I got custody. The link's right there. Flow.com/page/fathers rights. Both are going to get you there. There's four other links. His Instagram link is there. He has a TikTok, Facebook, and X account. Instagram. Let me see these four other links that pop up. The online store. Um, yeah, Instagram, TikTok, and X on the Flow page. So we'll go there.
Okay.
Anybody subscribe to his YouTube channel. I'm gonna have all these links right here under this interview.
Okay.
Starts
Thank
off
you.
with yeah, actually I'm gonna share the page over here. You and me will see it. Sometimes it doesn't show up on my recording, but I can actually go add it later a little different. So I want to hit share so we can see it.
Okay.
We'll do that. Um, and then we'll just follow up with it.
Okay.
If I need to add it in like kind of manually later, it'll be fine, but you and me can see it and we can follow the conversation here. So
Okay.
this is what it looks like. Father's rights and resources, hashtag how I got custody, tools to represent yourself pro se in family court and win or to light a fire under your lawyer. Picture of James and his beautiful daughter here. Some years ago, she's an adult now. James's phone number, get a consult right here. And you could touch, it's even easier. Hit the icon to call, to text message or email. And what's this one right here with the pin? Is that just the address for mail?
Yeah, that's the address. It's
Okay.
just part of the setup there. Yeah.
Yep, yep. And then YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I recommend if you're serious about this, even if like a lot of guys aren't going to have funds day one when you see this, it'll help with your conversation with James because $80 is not that hard to get a hold of. You can start here, go look at this introductory video, explanation video of this page. And this one is 42 minutes long. I watched the whole thing last night and this morning, and it'll
Which
help.
one are you talking about? That's 42 minutes long?
It's the first video on the Flow page right under your social media, the explanation video.
Oh yeah. So I explain how to go through this. Well, some people will go in there and like, there's so many things to look at. it's overwhelming. So I kind of walk them through it also if they forget this video or they want to see me go through it.
Uh-huh. And then let's see, video, three things every dad needs from the store. So this is an explanation. Can you go over a little bit of the online store, winning products that James and many others won with? Most important one, evidence rules video. Two, defense against protection orders. Huge, because everybody's gonna get that. Pretty much copy paste.
Right, right.
Motion for temporary visit order. Some of
So
these.
those and right below that shopping cart, I have a video explaining those three. Those are the three most important things in my store because the evidence rules are the rules of what's allowed in court and what's not. And guys, and especially these attorneys will let inadmissible evidence in court all the time. And if you could shut down sometimes half the testimony or the declarations or what an attorney says is inadmissible, if you could shut that down and keep it out, you could chip away at their argument. So that's the most important one. And one of the biggest obstacles men deal with is false allegations of child abuse, domestic violence, and stuff. So almost everybody's battling a restraining order, and we know how those are used. And I would think at least 90% of restraining orders out there are totally bogus and over the top. And that's a low estimate. And
Mhm.
then and then I have an argument for the best interest of the child, the arguments that I make. I attach exhibits. So there's a declaration in there. So if you have a specific, let's say you're in Maryland or you're in Florida and there's a specific motion form, I have a Word document you can adjust and change. I have Washington law in there. You can just swap out the Washington law, put Florida law or whatever you have going on. And there's a lot of changing you have to do. But if you go to the court's website and you have to start with a blank form and you're lost, it's worth the $45 of my packet and beyond that just to have a template and an organization and some of the arguments and the spirit of what I'm saying. And then I attach exhibits, some of the science about absence of fathers and how that's detrimental to kids and things like that. So you kind of all, it's not a totally fill in the blank like the Mad Libs that we did when we were a kid or whatever, but it gives you way more a head start, 50 meters down the track in a 200-meter dash, compared to a totally blank form. So these are the three most important. So I have a video on that. And then I have other resources like a set of interrogatories that's 74 pages long with 170 questions. You got to check your local rules to see whether there's a question limit. I have a motion for reconsideration sample. I've won some of those. For Washington state folks only, you can appeal from a family law commissioner to a judge and try again. A reconsideration is getting the same judicial officer to try again. And then I have other motions for things like Civil Rule 11 sanctions to punish the attorney for abusing the system against you, a sample of appeals packets. And then one thing that's really helpful also that I don't get into in that video is my demand letter packet where I think it's 31 letters, and each packet has an explanation of what's in there. But I have
Mhm.
31 demand letters, I believe, and that's demanding records from schools, records from medical places. Usually they have an idiot who's a clerk who says, "Oh, you're not the custodial parent, I can't give it to you." Well, they're violating your rights. And then letters to write to an attorney for their money back, letters to write to a police station for police harassing you, and several other things that guys usually deal with and counter with. Some people don't even know how to write a good formal professional looking letter, let alone know what to say in it. So
Yeah.
that's worth the 40. I had an attorney write a letter for me one time because I screwed up on a trade in on a car and bought something that was way more than I thought I was, a young dumb kid. I went to a lawyer and he charged me $100 to write a letter just to tell them, hey, this one line is bad. You need to undo this lease and it's bogus. And so my demand letter packet is $45 and there's 31 letters in there. Now you may only use one. Most people could use two or three, and I don't make it like $1,000, like $50 each letter because nobody's going to use all 31. But those are the type of things that are in my store since you kind of asked about that.
Yep, yep. And then I'm gonna head back over. I'm gonna keep switching back with the video here so we can we
Okay.
can, we can talk, and then I'm going back and forth with the website. And then let's see consultation rates. See, first consult up to 90 minutes, $100 flat fee. This is $20 off the normal 1.5 hour rate. Okay, follow-ups, $80 an hour, scheduled in
And
30.
I do that because the initial consult, people need a whole bunch of information and there's a
Yeah,
lot of getting to know their case. So it's, people at least need that much to get going. And almost I used to do an hour, but everybody would always go over 10 or 15 minutes. I'm like, okay, we need an hour and a half. And people
yeah,
are still trying to go over it. So that's what people need. But after that can be blocks of 30 minutes So $40 or 30 minutes to follow up because you missed a point or misunderstood or you got something new.
Yeah, and I would say, and James can add to this, is as he's already bringing up here, is when you if you contact James and you pay the fee and you got 90 minutes, take a breath in, but think about, prepare a little bit how to brief what you're going through without getting into probably the vocabulary of, dude, she's lying, she's cheating, she's did all this, she's a snake. When you try to break some of that talk out of the way, as important as it is, that will help James the best, I think, for you to go down the facts of your case, probably your location. And one thing that I learned to always get a copy of regularly in case it updates that show up on it is the what's it called, the registration. Now I'm starting to forget the term. Registration. What the hell is it called?
What are you
The
thinking about?
the history of the motions in your case. It's a whole brief.
Oh, the docket, or the
They'll
list
have
of.
the docket itself. It'll have every motion listed, everything that's happened in your case from the first request or the first pleading, the first notice of service
Yeah,
or proof of service.
yeah.
What's it called? Register of actions is what it's called in my area.
Yeah, most people just call it docket nationwide. That's a generic term. Up here, we call it the electronic court record, or ECR, in the greater Seattle area. But yeah, docket pretty much covers it, or the list, that your file in general. And that's a great thing to have, to update regularly. And most places you can go online and look at the docket, and that can be an index to your paperwork. If you're a person who likes to keep hard copies, that's the cover of your 3-ring binder. When I worked at a law firm, we used to have a hard copy of everything, electronic copy, and we used to organize stuff by date. And when you go into court, sometimes you're like, wait a minute, she's lying. She said in a declaration like 3 months ago this and that. And a lot of times your docket has a sub number or some kind of index number, or if it's just a date, if you have that index with you when you're in court and you kind of have your case familiar, or if you just do it electronically and you're in court with a laptop or you're doing a Zoom hearing, you have everything kind of in order, and you kind of remember, oh, where was that declaration? And then you look for maybe you do a search in the docket, if maybe it's a PDF or a Word document or however you keep track of it. That's an index to your file, so you can always go back, and then you can organize your file. I wish I would have done this from the beginning.
Yeah.
At the beginning, I was putting my stuff in folders for every hearing and stuff in a long file cabinet that had drawers as long as this
Yeah.
shelf behind me, and it was chaotic. But if I would have just got the docket, we have sub numbers 000100, and then I would have saved stuff, and then I would have marked it like that. Or if I had a scanner back then and I scanned it in, a lot of times now you go online, you get your documents, or you save them when the other attorney emails, and then you just label it 004, and you have an index, and you're looking, oh, where's that one? Oh, there's her declaration. Okay, it's 422, and you go down and find it, and boom, then you read it on the spot. So that's a great way to have an index to your file and stay organized. Staying organized helps you a lot, and helps you eventually get ready for trial down the road and figure out what you're looking for.
It does, and like guys, with fathers, and I know myself going in there, I still have it memorized to this day. But get ready, have it written down. Now you got a cell phone, you can have it in notes in your phone. Your case number, remember that to start with for sure. Your case number, because
Yeah,
when you go into the family law administrator's office, and they're going to say, okay, well, what's your case number? Because you say, well, I need papers, and then they might even have to explain to you, okay, well, what do you want? Like you want like you said, that there's different names for it, register of actions, which is a whole list of everything beginning to end, and then you can pick each one of those things and ask them, I want a copy of this proof of service. I want a copy of the minutes from this hearing, the minute order, plus the findings in
right,
order after hearing. These are some of the names in my area, but know your
right.
case number. And then let's see, in organization, now we have like AI is doing all kinds of stuff. I'm not that privy to all of it, but I know it can be very helpful. There's apps that some fathers are building out there. I'm going to probably have one of them for an interview pretty soon. I'm still learning about it, but the app itself helps really organize everything. And keeping a physical copy, a digital copy, PDF. Like I try to keep both. And there's the background. I'll relate to the guys going through this. Even if I was homeless, I had boxes in the back of my car with my physical papers with coffee stains on them and stuff. I still have them to this day. The
Wow.
original originals. And
Yeah.
but you got to get organized. You know, James talking about having a binder that will help with getting a consultation and getting your money's worth with speaking with someone like James, with James, to have everything in line, have everything by date, by the order and the register of actions. That will help for your case and for talking to James before you get in there, know some of this stuff.
And actually, if you go to my YouTube channel, you know, on any YouTube page, there's a magnifying glass above the main video. And you could search within somebody's page any topic, or if you're looking at a music channel, you could search for a song or whatever. So right above the main video, it's kind of at a distance. I can't tell
I
for
got it.
sure if
Oh
that's where you
yeah,
are.
I know where
Okay,
yours,
so there's
but
a magnifying glass. If you type in the word consult, I have about 4 or 5 videos on a consult, what to expect, doing a first consult, typical things I go over. So, but I usually run through the basic stuff. But the more you're prepared, if somebody looks at my flow page and looks at some of the must-see information and the science and stuff, it gives them, you know, we don't have to go over that during the consult. But if people could absorb it, my initial consult would be like 3 hours. That's really what people need to learn all the basics, everything. But that's too much. Like nobody has a class in college that's 3 hours long. You know,
yeah,
it's usually an hour or whatever. So it's just too much at once, and then people decide whether they want to do that.
I am on
So
your
just
YouTube and I'm kind of showing this is a little bit different recording. I'm still learning every time, and this is like the best angle I could put together. All the other ones, I'm like looking sideways. I'm fixing every little thing I can, but I think we might actually, we'll have to see. Otherwise, I'll add this all in, but I'm on the YouTube. Me and James can see it, and it might be easily already a part of the recording, but I've typed in consult and we saw on James's YouTube consultation videos coming up. We can type in contempt and we see these come up. So all these keywords, domestic
yeah,
violence.
I pretty much have covered about any top. I got like 1,200 videos. I pretty much covered something about every topic. I mean, there's never doing a one-on-one consult for your facts, your situation, your circumstance. Everybody's stuff is different. The path to victory or fighting is usually kind of the same elements. So if people get that stuff down by my free videos, great. But it's just if you're trying to get optimum results or information from me, it's good to know your specific case and the specific allegations. It's usually the same old, but there's specific things you could do. If somebody gets a hold of me when they just got served a restraining order versus somebody who's had a restraining order for a year and a half, there's a way different approach, even though
Yep.
they both have the same elements of what they're dealing with. So,
Very good. Let me go back. We're going to go back to the flow page. I'm going to keep covering everything that's on here. Let me see. So right underneath the consultation rates, we got as well here. That's the cool thing about these YouTube video interviews on this podcast is sometimes it's just fathers trying to eat for the day, or these guys will need a consult, and this is a good connection, a little triangular connection right here. Say you watch somebody else's interview that will say most probably for the United States, but even if you're in another country, you probably still get a lot of helpful because it's basic information too that things are
right.
pretty similar across country lines. But where guys I'll have donation links for other guests that are fathers in the middle of a fight to say you could help them with all kinds of things, and you can even help connect them with say, hey, like James is doing a lot of good work here and as a little bit a part of this group. I've heard of him like, hey, I'm going to pay for your consult with James. And there's ways to donate to guys in that way to get them started. And then even donating to James right here as well, because we all got to get by and live. And if you want to help support James's platform so he can continue to grow and stay dynamic with all of his platforms and his ability to keep showing up, there's direct donation links here in many forms: Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, and Google Pay. So that is available. Again, these links are going to be under this video. And then I didn't know, I just saw this actually this morning. You've done an interview with Pearl as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but she took it down for some reason. She had,
Oh,
and I believe it looked like she took a whole playlist down that wasn't getting a lot of views. It was a
okay.
great interview, and she actually is a great interviewer and a great listener. Like I
Uh-huh.
met her literally 2 minutes before the call. We had corresponded, but I met her 2 minutes before the call, and we didn't do any prep. And she was listening intently, and she would say, wait a minute, back up. What do you mean about this and about that?" And she'd want to let me explain. And so it was a really thorough, juicy interview. I wished I would have downloaded it because now I can't get a hold of her. She's even bigger than she was. That was summer 2022, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think that, people like to watch her for the entertainment. They like her checking crazy women and making them look stupid. And that's where she gets millions of views. But a video like mine and all the other ones on the playlist were getting like 5 to 20,000 views. I think mine got like the interview got 13,000. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of great comments, but not everybody's looking for this is how you fight. People are on there to say, "Oh, look at her making fun of that hoe," or or whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
So we'll see. I know a friend of mine has been in direct contact with her, and I've had minimal like commenting or direct messaging back and forth myself. I've messaged her with the last platform I had to try and get an interview, but a friend of mine in the UK did, and I think she still does or used to live out there. He met her in person, disqualified dads, and so we'll see. I think that it's worth actually still trying to reach out and ask, say, hey, can we either get a copy of this interview or it'd be really powerful to get it posted back up because people want to see it. So we'll follow up with that. And
Okay.
then I'd like to see that.
Yeah, it was a good one, especially like I said, I was impressed with it, and she's a young lady too, so I was impressed with the way that she questioned and she listened. It's a lot of people don't know how to listen nowadays. I ask people questions, and they tell me a story leading up to the answer, or it provokes a thought in their head, and they start answering that thought. And I'm like, no, when was your contempt hearing? Well, the mother, she was accusing me of all kind of stuff. Oh, and by the way, when we were first dating, I'm like, dude, I just
Yeah.
need an answer for this date. So. And
If
that's part of the guys are in an emotional state because they're still traumatized and they're in battle. And so, it's hard to focus sometimes, even when somebody's trying to help you. But
it
that's
is.
one thing I do in the consultations, I will steer people right to the direct point. And some people they expect to call and just vent and tell their whole story. It's like I'm trying to get I could make consults just if I sat back and just listened to people, they'll take up the whole time, and I'll say, well, you need a follow-up. We didn't really get to where I can't do that to somebody and rip them off like that. I have to steer the
Right.
conversation to get them the information they have. And another thing I'd like to say about that is I always tell people this. And because I'm honest and raw and real, and I don't have any agenda, I'm not selling something from somebody. I'm not trying to be politically correct. It's about truth and what people actually need. I
Hmm.
tell people, don't believe what I'm saying. This should be a habit of yours in court with a judge. When you ask a clerk at the courthouse something, when you ask a family court facilitator or the self-help department, don't believe anything anybody says. And
Yeah.
this is a great thing in life too, when you're looking for the truth in anything. If you're an investigator, or this is what detectives do, this is what lawyers are supposed to do, this is what scientists do when they're doing scientific experiment. You see something, you don't believe it, like what I'm saying some stuff that a lot of people do call me because it resonates with them and they know I know what I'm talking about. They're like, I got to talk to this dude. But I encourage people to know it for yourself. I want you to know this for yourself. I don't want to say something and you regurgitate so well, that's what James said. I want you to know it. So the fact that I say I got custody and I won in court over and over, don't believe that. Go look at my flow page, and I don't know if you're going to get into it, but I have winning court orders there.
I will.
And then
Mm.
you could see opposing attorneys and guardian items, and I could even give people other stuff. Those are just some of the major ones that are really important. And then look at the other people who say, "Oh, you can win doing this." Okay, well, where's your history of winning and stuff? Don't believe what I'm saying. Make me back it up. And when you're talking to a clerk at the courthouse, they say, well, you can't file that. Okay, where's the rule on that? Where's the law? Don't just tell me and have me believe you,
Hmm.
so
And then right here, it's just on that part on that page. It's proof James won. Court orders. There's a whole bunch of stuff listed here. Custody order, contempt order, appeals court, another appeals court, reversal of the presiding judge, transcript, mom's modification dismissed. And so I clicked on the first one in custody order, and I was watching one of James's videos. He's talking about, and I think it's that longer introductory video at the top of the website. if you don't feel like, and maybe you don't know how, I understand too. It's the first time reading these things, you may not understand what you're reading yet. Even though you should know how to read top to bottom, you can scroll through this. He's highlighted everything. He's put in big red arrows showing you if you want to scan
Yeah.
through it first. Child shall reside with the father. Okay, that he's highlighted all of this, and this is what court orders, final court orders look like. A lot of them look very similar across counties and states. Designation of custodian is scheduled to reside in the majority of the time with the father. The parent is designated the custodian of the child. This parent, and so the whole
Yep.
court order is here.
That's decision making. I had sole decision making on everything.
Let's see. And then contempt order, like these things. I talked to uh, I've even got kind of quick and luckily just free conversations with lawyers in the hallway, even recently at the family courthouse, because I knew who they were walking by, and I asked them about contempt. And I was like, lawyers do not even want to touch it for many
That's
reasons.
crazy.
Yeah, James could probably explain some of that too, but what I saw, because look, they work together every day. They are the judges. They switch spots and then they go eat together. They go to these, like, and in my county, they go to some creepy little like illegal or like gambling spots and stuff that I've heard about. And
Wow.
they're very corrupt, and they don't want to ruin a judge's order that they're not going to admit that they're wrong. Like when I had to file 220 counts of contempt, I did by myself. I did it very well too. I was very meticulous about list the order, what part of the order was broken, and an explanation and evidence. And so I did that for it was 700 pages long, the first one that I filed. And one of the child appointed attorneys, not for my case, but another one in there, which these are some of the most evil people in the courthouse, in my opinion,
Right.
was the uh, uh, public defender, free provided public defender for the opposing party in my case. And so they're all in it together. And anyway, so they don't want to represent you on the prosecuting side because fathers are forced to be prosecutors. The DA should be doing this, I think, and they're not because we're screwed in there. They call it quasi-criminal and all this mess. The
Right.
attorney said he didn't want to touch contempt because they're going against their buddies in there.
Right. It's insane. And there's other people out there that say dads just can't win contempt at all. You know, some
Yeah.
of them they don't want to go against their buddies. Some of them they don't want to be on the offensive. Some of them never tried contempt. And then some of them out there say, and there's some advocates out there say you can't win contempt, you can't win
Yeah.
makeup time. I won makeup time, a $250 penalty against her. She had a guardian ad litem that was defending her, and she had an attorney with 17 years experience. And I destroyed her without an attorney. So if I can do it, and before I did this, I was a warehouse worker who flunked out of college. And
Mhm.
this is what I'm telling people. People are like, no, I can't do it. It's too much. There's all this legal mumbo jumbo. Well, actually, if you look at my orders, most of the words are plain English words that people use. There's a couple legal technicalities in there, but it's not as we paint this picture. And a lot of life coaches will say, or therapists, the more you think about and meditate and focus on something, the more it becomes the reality of what you're in. And
Mhm.
if you just look at the overwhelming, overpowering court system, I remember Kobe Bryant when he got his tendon torn and stuff like that. He said, if I would have looked at the whole mountain, I probably would have never come back after that tendon tear. I looked at what I got to do this week and each day this week to get to the end of the week. He did it incrementally, and he was a master at thinking like that. And if you the more you focus on how insurmountable a system is, the more you're just going to surrender or it's going to be overwhelming. And you won't even get this information that shows how simple some things are. Not easy, but simple. Some things are simple. And contempt, I've told this people, contempt is the easiest motion to do on your own. All you got to do is say, the court order said this, the child was withheld in that time. That's all you need to do half the time.
Yeah.
Then when they respond, she'll say, well, I withheld the child because they didn't want to go. And then you reply to a response. Like in Washington, there's higher court decisions, and I have it in my flow page that say if a woman doesn't make a child go, that is contempt. So
Yeah.
sometimes the motion is simple and you catch them on the reply to their response or
Yeah,
trap
and
them.
they will there's a few points here that comes to mind. One of them, a brief one, is mothers, and in my experience, and many I see, will use an excuse like, well, the child doesn't want to go, so I'm not going to make them. And then we're talking about like a 5-year-old. Okay. And if there's 14,
Right.
16, things change a little bit. But when you're talking about a very young minor, it's not their decision. And the courts will even let them get away with that if we're not fighting back against it and speaking up. And then part of the
Right.
reason I see like what James is advocating is that the lawyers as well, they'll kind of want to go in there and just say, hey, just get every other weekend or something. Don't trust what they say. Something else that had come to mind when a police officer tells you, oh, this is how an order works. Don't get yourself arrested and fight with them or anything. But also, I've had multiple times police officers tell me false information. Sometimes they got in trouble with internal affairs complaints because after, like I said, 2018, I started getting at everything. Where I go into the
Right.
family law, there's an administrator office and then there's a facilitator office in my area. They have different names. Administrator, one time I called in and I said, hey, I need the most recent order. I'm coming into the courthouse this morning, even though I already had an order. I say because there's arguments. Moms will use a minute order that doesn't have a final order attached to it yet. There's back and forth on which one is final, which one is not, or they'll use an order that doesn't even exist anymore that's been surpassed to try and trick police officers with it. I've experienced this, or schools. And so the family law administrator will say something like, no, this is the order. They could be wrong too. Be careful. I've had an attorney also tell me when I thought, oh, I paid an attorney. I'm good. I can trust everything they say. They said, oh, we had a minute order on, say it's a Friday. It was like today. This was 2015. The old order got shut down. They shut down a domestic violence restraining order that was temporary. My attorney threw it out and then I could then go to my child's school and pick her up. Well, I went over to my child's school to get her, and the school says, well, we already called the police and they're coming because we have this order that has a restraining order on it. I said, okay, well, I'll talk to them. Things just got changed today. I can't get a hold of my attorney, but I send an email and one of their assistants messages me back and said, no, it's okay. We got an email from the mom says you could go to the mom's parents-in-law's house and just get the kid there. And I'm like, I don't have to worry about nothing. I'll follow what they say. So I drove over there down the street and then I'm outside and then like the mother-in-law comes out because she was married at the time. She's on the phone, doesn't say anything. I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then my ex and then my ex's husband at the time were outside on the phone walking around and then police show up. They pull the batons out and I'm sitting in my car scared. And then I almost got beat up and arrested. But then the cops are saying, hey, they have a special form that gets submitted to their office. It pretty much gives them, excuse me, the go ahead that they can arrest you for restraining orders and stuff. And they said, hey, there isn't one. And of course, they don't care to do the false reports on mom. But then again, right there, that's where my lawyer's office assistant almost got me arrested, even though they were kind of right. But don't trust all that stuff. Look for yourself. Look at all James'
And also,
information.
like, did you walk out of court with a court order that day when they lifted the protection order?
So there'll be a minute order after every one, but I didn't get anything physical. But even in the court, the
Yeah.
judge and my attorney was like, "No, this is effective now." And the judge even told me and my kid's mom at the time, "If you involve the police one more time for any reason, I'll put your kid in foster care." And then she still went and called the police. This was like 2 hours after leaving court. And
Yeah, and
I,
and and got that's a good lesson where guys should always walk out of court with a copy of an order. A lot of times they print the order right there, they'll write it up and they'll make copies for people. And you got to always carry your orders with you in case the cops do show up. And the thing about the cops is when the cops say, well, you don't want to do that, that'll make you look bad in court. Or if you have the kid and the mom says, give the kid back, like I talk about people when they don't have court orders, like you can keep your kid if you want to, except there's two states that don't let you, Michigan and Georgia have these fascist laws,
right.
but you can keep your kid. The mother's doing it, and the cops come over and they say, "Hey, you're going to look bad in court if you withhold the kid." Those cops are giving legal advice, and so I've had clients of mine put me on the phone and do a speaker call talk with the cops, and I'm saying, "What are you going to do if he doesn't arrest him for what crime?" Well, the mother is saying that he's harming the kids, and just in case he's doing it. Oh, so you have just in case cause?
Yeah.
It's only probable cause. And then I chew these cops out. I said, if you take those kids, because they're going to take a set of kids to CPS because the
Hmm.
mother alleged the kid was being abused. I said, he already went through the process and he got a court order for 50-50 right now. You're going to say you supersede a judge and you're going to place the kids with CPS? I said, if you guys are fathers, you're the biggest sellouts of fathers out there because CPS is the biggest trafficker out. You will endanger the kids more. Now, they took the kids still, but at least that we saved them from going to CPS. They went to the mom and eventually the dad got all that squared away. But
Yep.
there's a way to talk to the police. And that's one of my free pamphlets in my flow page. A lot of people don't know how to talk to the police or CPS when they come knocking at your door.
Yep. And I got an example in 2013, short example. I had a court order and I had picked up my child like 15 minutes late from my own mother's house because my mother was watching my kid from X all the time.
Yeah.
And my mother wanted to argue with me about something. I can't remember what it was. And just the fact that she didn't like what I had to say about it. My kid got in my vehicle with me, and then we drove over to my cousin's house where I was staying at the time. It was a nice weekend birthday, beautiful home. My daughter's cousin's birthday was going to be the next morning, Friday night. Well, they did even my own mother has been a poisonous part of my case, but aside from that, my mother and my kid's mother both called the sheriffs and said he picked up his kid 15 minutes late, so he broke the order, and now we want her back. So initially, the sheriff's office put out at like an Amber Alert, kidnapping a child. I always go get the records from every law enforcement, the call sheet from the call center and the report. Sometimes they ain't filling out a report. You need to request and say that they need to,
I actually get the audio of the 911 call.
and the audio, everything, video, chest camera, everything. And so the sheriff shows up and I was scared. This young sheriff didn't even know what he's talking about. He walked up to me and he said, I can put out a warrant for your arrest if you don't give your daughter back right now. And I said, it's my own weekend. And that's what he said. And so I was scared. It was really sad. My daughter was 5 at the time. She's holding my hand as we come out the door. And she's
Yeah.
like, I'll never leave you, Dad, and the sheriff says this. I let my daughter go with the mom who was there. Later, 5 years later, I'm finally learning to go get all these reports, and I pick it up, and the sheriff's call report and the report says it shows how it went from kidnapping to a keep the peace to at the very bottom, and they'll never take accountability, but somebody wrote it on there. Father was not in violation of his court order. And so they basically kidnapped my child. I tried to report that to the DA 5 years later, 7 years later, and they're like, oh, you're not going about this right, and statute of limitations. So I had the sheriff's office actually kidnap my child that day.
Right. And see, in situations like that, also when they start advising you what you're doing and what's wrong, I'll say, "Oh, you got a law degree? Are you a lawyer?" No. Well, why are you giving me legal advice? I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just saying it'll look bad. So you're telling me how it will look to a judge in a court of law, which is advice on how I proceed in my court case. You're committing unauthorized practice law without a license. Can I get your badge number? And then they'll shut up on that.
Yeah.
But when somebody reports something and you end up dealing with the cops or whatever, if it wasn't true, that's a crime of false reporting. I report that. And one thing that almost everybody can do without having to be a legal expert is to go to small claims court and sue somebody for the trauma, intentional infliction of emotional stress, negligent infliction of emotional distress, the tort of outrage, and things like this. Sue the officer individually, your baby's mom, whatever. I sued my guardian ad litem one time, and I sued this couple that came to court and testified that I shouldn't be around my daughter. And then several months later, I got custody of her. And then I sued them in small claims court. And I got invited on Judge Judy and Judge Joe Brown for each one of those. And both of them, you got to get both sides to agree. So when you see somebody on the shows, both sides agree. And some of them will look stupid, like, why did you agree when you look like that much of an idiot?
Yeah.
But and then they'll pay your fare, they'll pay your room and board, and they'll pay the judgment you get because they know it's hard to collect on it. But anyway, those sides didn't want to go, so then it didn't happen. And then it just went to small claims. And then by the time we were proceeding, I was like, I messed with them enough, and I just kind of let it go. So as much as I was in and out of court, I still let a lot of stuff go. I could have probably done 2 more appeals and got my judge reversed, but the only thing that would have come of it was me being able to say, nah, I won. And I'm dealing with my daughter in her teenage years and other stuff. So I let some stuff go. And I might have had a couple more Court of Appeals wins.
A lot of guys, they end up letting a lot of stuff go. I let a lot of stuff go. And contempt's really big. That's why I want to say this is how important it is. I'm glad to have James here because if I would have filed contempt the first year, basically the first few months in 2012, I would have already had a a pattern being set,
Right.
and hopefully, as even though it can be grim, but James is an example. And I've seen it. I've also sat. I've not only have I been in my own court hearings, but when you sit there all day, and they especially when they don't like you and they make you wait till 4:30 p.m., I hear 20, 30 other proceedings or
Right.
status, everything. I've seen it. Okay, I've seen people get, and judges like, okay, now you're going to get your sentencing for contempt, ma'am, for moms and stuff. I've seen it.
And
Um,
there's a lot. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, please, no, I got to figure out what I was
There,
thinking too.
there's a lot of great arguments for contempt that people don't realize, and there are a lot of common sense arguments. And things that deter guys from doing the right thing are like, well, they said I can't win contempt, or they said that, well, we can't do anything because, the child didn't want to go. Who cares what they said? Go
Mhm.
look at the law. Stop listening to what everybody else says, because if you think about it, the excuse for a child not going is the child doesn't want to go, which means the mother doesn't want to force her to go. So the mother's participating in the I don't want to go. What if I said, well, I don't want to pay child support. That's my excuse for not paying. Do you think that would work in court? No, of course it wouldn't. And then on top of that, every day they're getting men found in contempt of child support. Every day across the country, men are going to jail for child support, which
Yeah,
is counterintuitive, because you need to go out and make money, and you're in jail not making money. You're supposed to pay back, and you can't get out until you pay,
they
because I
take your
think you got some
driver's
money
license
stashed
first
somewhere.
too.
Yeah. And so they're taking away your freedoms and ability to make money. And that's over money. How many more billion times more important is the love and relationship of a parent than money? So
Mhm.
why aren't they finding people contempt left and right for that? Because they don't care, because they get the Title 4D money, and there's just a culture and mentality of the court, and they do what they're used to doing, and they think every dad's a Homer Simpson. We got a million Homer Simpson type of images in Hollywood. So these judges are literally growing up brainwashed, thinking men only care about being an every other weekend dad. But
Yeah,
when a child doesn't want to go, the case law in Washington in our Supreme Court says you have to make a child go. And that daughter was 13 years old, that the mother wouldn't make her go. And the child had an attitude toward the dad. And the court said, it looks like you contributed to the attitude, or you don't make a good faith effort to make her go, you're in contempt. And then if you think about it, parents make kids do stuff they don't want to do all the time.
they go to school,
Brush your
don't they?
teeth, yeah,
They don't want to go to
go to
school.
school, take medicine they don't like to take, which is in their best interest when they're sick, and get up and go to school, do chores, eat vegetables, take a bath or whatever. They do all kinds of stuff they don't want to do, and the parents make them. Why? Because the parent is the parent, and they have coercive control over the child to make them incentivize them to do something. Well, if I'm the most important thing in the world to the child outside of food, water, and air, why aren't they making the child go? There, you see all kinds of parents say, kids say, well, I don't want to go. No, you're going. And that's the end of it. How
Yeah.
does a mother say, I got a guy right now dealing with, he just did a contempt hearing. I don't know how it turned out yet. I haven't heard from him, but I think his kid is 4, and he doesn't want to go. But when he has gotten the kid, he never says, I hate you, dad. I don't want to go with you. Or he'll say, I want to stay with you. So in the moment of the transfer, the child doesn't want to go. And the mother, that was their excuse. The child didn't want to go. So the 4-year-old is running the house. Where in the world does anybody even say that? Even a 13-year-old or 14-year-old, at that age, you don't have a right to drive. You don't have a right to get a lease or a mortgage on a house. You don't have a right to vote or get cigarettes or alcohol or do a million other things, because you are assumed incompetent. And I've seen judges say, well, we can't make a 13, 14, 15-year-old go. Yeah, you can. If somebody disrupts your court and you say, sit down and be quiet, and they do it again, you say, sit down or I'm going to hold you in contempt, and they do it again, they'll immediately throw that person in jail or kick him out of the courtroom and fine him in contempt and fine them. They have the contempt. Case law and contempt is the court always has inherent power to enforce its orders, and they always have inherent power to do contempt. They could do it without you even requesting. They don't get anybody's permission to tell somebody to shut up in the courtroom. A judge won't say, well, a lawyer won't say, well, just go, that's okay, let's just tolerate it and let it slide. They don't know what they're doing when they're standing up and disrupting. So every angle of contempt you look at, especially child support, is a similar argument when it comes to the welfare of a child. The court has ordered this order, and this is my time. So the court's supposed to do what's in the best interest of the child. So it must be what's best for the child to go with me. Who in the world would tell a child, okay, if you don't want to go with your dad, it's okay. I trust your judgment. When a court a judge with a law degree, after a full hearing, has declared the child needs to see the father every other weekend or 50-50. And you're saying, I don't have to make the child go because the child doesn't think it's best for them.
Mhm.
That's insane. That's like
Yeah.
saying you don't have to take this medicine or get this shot because you don't like it. That's too bad. And then on top of that, when a parent is saying the child doesn't want to go or the child hates the parent, who is in control of that environment in the home? When somebody sees a kid acting up in a store and they're throwing a tantrum on the floor because they can't have their favorite cereal, what do we usually blame that on? Oh, that's just the way the kid is, and that's the cereal they like. And no, we blame it on the home environment, and we put it on the parents to control how the children turn out. So
Mhm.
if a parent says the child doesn't want to go and do their own best interests, why didn't that parent say, just like they do going to grandma and grandpa's and the kids don't feel like going, look, it's going to be a great time. They have a pool. We're going to do this. And you
Oh
hype it
yeah.
up.
They don't
Why
do that
can't
for
you do
dad.
that
Yep.
for the person who is and honor and respect that child's basic life need for that other parent? It's because what they're admitting is that they're unfit and unable to coerce the child to do what's healthy for them. So it's a confession of unfitness too. And then on top of that, in Washington State, and I'll mention in case anybody's taking notes out there, RCW 26.09.260, I think it's subsection like 2A, or it says that you can change custody if there's a change of circumstance, and the change of circumstance has to be something like abuse or neglect, or the parents deviated away. Like it was every other weekend and the mom started giving them 50-50, and we've been doing this for 5 or 6 months. Let's change it to 50-50. Another reason to do a change of custody is 2 contempts in 3 years. So even if you're not in Washington State, you could tell your court, hey, look, that progressive state up there in Washington, those guys have laws that say contempt is so horrible and horrific that if you do it twice within 3 years, we're giving you a reason to go to court and modify.
Yeah.
And let's see, it's actually 2609-260 subsection 2D. And so that opens, now that's no guarantee you'll get it. They'll still look at the circumstances, but that opens the door for you to go to court to modify. So it's a serious thing. And see, this is why the more knowledge you get, the more you have as an arsenal to spit out. If you're in the military, the more things you need that hand-to-hand combat, using your bayonet, using a knife, using a grenade, you'll have more weapons to use in the war.
And then using contempt, it's such an important point because what the hell is the point of the court order if you're not if
If it's
people
not
are
followed,
telling
yeah,
you, yeah,
yeah.
people are telling you, oh, there's no reason to do contempt, they're not going to enforce it, then there's no point to an order at all. And so like what James talks about here and in this channel, it's not legal advice. This is a lot of information on, and this is what he calls his channel, how I got custody. And this is the same thing for me. And I got my ass kicked, but this is how I fought as much as I could. This is how I went through the things I did. And what James got full custody, how he did it, and provides his own paperwork and what he would do in your situation. And like we said, with contempt, okay, you have the order, you're going to have to name, it's probably the same pretty much across the board. What order is it? The actual order, the date of the order, the judge, what order, and the part of the order, what it says, and what part was broken, and then a description of that and any evidence attached to that. Pretty much it, count for count. Unfortunately, sometimes even like for myself, with the 220 I did one time, 144 of them were phone calls. And I had to write out every single 144 on page after page. And then I had to make copies for the court, for the other party, for the attorneys, for the child appointed attorneys. I had to make it cost a bunch of money.
What
So
year? What year did you finally have a contempt hearing?
2020 lasted
Yeah,
about
and
a
so
year.
that was when everything was getting backlogged and all that stuff. And some states that you get a hearing within 2 weeks turn out to be 2 months or 3 months and stuff. I
Yeah,
always encourage people the day somebody violates a court order, file contempt. I did. My baby's mom did 3 days in a row. Boom, I did contempt, and then she did
100%.
two more, then she did two more after that. Because if you have like 10 contempts throughout a year, a lot of guys will wait and build their case and go to trial. Well, you're missing out on time now. And also, every piece of case law in every state has case law. Contempt is such an old remedy. It goes back to the beginning of the courts. They established the court's power. The court has inherent power to enforce its orders. So the fact, if anybody tells you they can't do that, they're lying because case law says they can. And
Yeah.
then the purpose of contempt is to coerce compliance. Every state has case law like that. So if they can enforce their orders and the purpose is course compliance and somebody's not complying, why would we not fix it? And then another thing I do to appease the court, I'll try and get the court offended that she violated. I said, this is your order. You have authority and power. And she's flipping her nose, thumbing her nose at you and flipping you off and saying, I don't care what the court says. And what, like you said, what's the purpose if she's not going to comply? And the court has the power to do this. And if you find her in contempt, the purpose of contempt is course compliance. Hopefully this will end it and we'll never have to see you again. I'm hoping that this will end it. Instead of you looking like you're abusing the system against her, you could tell the court, look, I just want this to be enforced. I just want to see my kid. I want to end the conflict and the alienation and the undermining of the court order. And you're the only one who has the power to do that. I need you to intervene, not just for me, but for the sake of the child, to maintain the relationship, because you ordered, this court ordered, this is what's best for the child. She's not thinking about the child and what's best for the child, and she won't do what's best for the child, which is kind of an admission of being unfit. I
Yeah.
need you to fix that for the sake of the child. This isn't about me versus her as much as the child, and the child has a right in their best interest to access this in this broken family, this conflict, that my daughter needs me as much as possible. And I'm just hoping that this will end it. Because if you don't find her in contempt, she'll continue to do it. And then sometimes, almost always, they'll give a warning on contempt. I had a guy, he had done 5 contempts, and they actually gave him makeup time, but they didn't find her in contempt because they knew she had this pattern. And they probably thought, I saw one judge one time with our laws up here say, oh, you just want to get a second contempt so you can change custody. Well, that's a violation of the evidence rules. The judge is acting like they could read his mind. And so they didn't find contempt on that. And that was crazy. So crazy stuff like that obviously happens. But
Mhm.
this one guy had 5 contempts and he lost all of them, but he still got makeup time. And it's like, if it's not contempt, why'd you give makeup time? You're contradicting yourself. And he didn't make good arguments. And then when he got with me, um, I'm sorry, he missed 3 contempts. When he got with me, he got her found in contempt 5 times after I kind of tweaked his argument.
Yeah.
And so, but by that time, she was like, he got a hold of me. She's like 16, 17. She was already kind of brainwashed and stuff. But he got the mother in trouble and he was seeing his kid, and then some ugly stuff happened. But if
Yeah.
he would have jumped on it the right way from the beginning, he might have salvaged that whole thing and maybe even got custody.
Yeah, and so the beginning of this interview, I went as quick as I could through a huge history, 2012 to 2022, and it still lingers on to today, all of it. But right off the bat in 2012, after we had a 50-50 custody in December of 2011, well, January, we're right back in there to modify it, put me on weekends, DVRO, restraining order. Well, I didn't see my child for a couple of months after that. I was homeless, got a job. And then again, I could not, I was even afraid, like I can't contact the kid's mom to say, hey, I'm going to show up at the weekend pickup. So when I went to show up out there, there's nobody there. There was like at a McDonald's. And then so the first time I called the police department because I didn't know what else to do. I'm going to explain a little bit of the mistake here. And this doesn't really happen that often. I was a very nice officer. He's like, okay, well, let's not call her. Follow me to her house and I'll go knock on the door and we'll see if we can get your kid back. Knocked on the door and it was her first time. So she was scared after that. She was never scared again. She was like crying. And my little 2-year-old walked with the police officer across the parking lot. Then my kid just took off from him and ran to my arms. Well, if I would have that first day, if I would have went and filed for contempt immediately, would this process would have been started. Instead, I didn't, and then I got a retaliation. I was arrested like 2 weeks later for another domestic violence restraining order violation, which actually on that day I left a voicemail because she didn't release my child again. And the voicemail
Yeah.
led to that. It was like, dude, if I would have
And there's
started,
sometimes when somebody does a contempt motion, that scares the other side enough where they don't bother violating. They know the guy's going to do something. And when you don't do something, that just feeds the monster thinking, oh, I could get away with doing whatever I want. I'll just do stuff that's even worse. So,
absolutely. So if I would have started right off the bat and I would have had tons of them. And then like, even if they give a warning the first time, fine. Because the ultimate goal here is to get the order followed so there's peace,
right.
right? So if they follow
Yeah.
it, they understand. This is one of the
Right.
most important interviews I've done. Daniel Mercury was a huge one as far as his knowledge of Constitution, state, and the United States Constitution. This interview right here is one to go back, watch multiple times, take notes, And then all of this tenfold, 100-fold is on James' website and YouTube channel. I want to, this is on my mind right now. This is something that I love to see James say, and this is a super heavy knockout because there is an effort. I just had an interview yesterday that posted today, Sunday, Mother's Day, about even Canada is trying to get the word parental alienation out of the system and punish you for even saying it. And so what I saw James say multiple times, he knows it by heart, and I want to give him the credit for that first, but I'll read the definition right here. And I need to learn it by heart. I tried to bring it up in that interview. I didn't have this next to me. But the word alienate, James will pick up on this, is it's a word. It's in the dictionary. It exists. It is something that's been a part of our language for a long time. It says to cause someone to feel estranged, unfriendly, or hostile, often turning them away from a group or relationship where they once felt welcomed or attached. It means creating a sense of separation, making people feel isolated or causing them to stop supporting a person or idea. So how in the hell does that exist, but only not exist when it comes to a parent? I got this from James.
Yeah, and what
Knockout quote.
one of the reasons why it's been maligned is because it got really famous in the early 2000s. Richard Gardner, who's a psychologist who coined the phrase parent alienation syndrome, he wrote a book about it. He made a lot of money off of it, and then a bunch of dads got custody off of it because it's clear how traumatizing it can be if you make the argument correctly. Then feminists lost their mind, and there's a big backlash calling it junk science. And Richard Gardner killed himself. Some people think he was murdered. I didn't even know about that until recently, talking to a guy who says he was murdered. So I wouldn't put it past that,
Yeah.
because there's a Georgia senator, when she was speaking out against CPS, she was killed. Her husband did a murder suicide, and it was suspicious. He shot himself in the back of the head or something weird. And so if senators are dropping off when they speak against the trafficking of the systems, I wouldn't put it past it. But
Oh yeah.
where Father's Rights Group got it wrong, they try to create parent alienation syndrome and put it in the DSM-B and make it a mental disorder. Well, parent alienation is an action you do, just like a serial killer kills people. That is not the mental disorder. They're a sociopath or a psychopath, which causes them to do it. These parents are narcissists, mentally ill, bipolar, egomaniacs, and they commit parent alienation. So then they went too far with it. But there's plenty of psychologists and psychiatrists that have written papers on it, and I have some of those on my flow page. So if you got millions of people talking about it, it's a word in the dictionary, and it means withholding. And then the language of some of the laws. I just did a video on reading the laws where it says the court shall consider this, that. The court shall consider which parent is willing to facilitate a relationship with the other parent. The opposite of that is alienation. So the language of the laws in every state is against alienation. That's an anti-alienation statute. We need to consider which parent is more willing to facilitate a relationship with the other parent. Well, alienation is not facilitating it or blocking it. So it's just a minutia word game. But what I recommend that people go on there, they say, look, the mother is undermining, disparaging the father, and sabotaging the relationship and trying to alienate my affections. If you throw it in the mix there and they say, oh, we don't like that word alienation. Okay, she's trying to sabotage and undermine and violate the access to the parent. And that's traumatic, and that violates these factors in the law. And there's a bunch of science out there, and there's plenty of scientists saying that this phenomenon is real, and brainwashing the kid. Brainwashing is a great word to use too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's insane that it does, but it's almost like we talk about narcissists a lot, and people get sick and tired of hearing narcissist. Oh, everybody's a freaking narcissist. Well, society has grown cold, and there are a lot of people doing that, and there's millions of women doing this narcissistic stuff to men in court. Now, I've worked with some women who are dealing with a narcissistic man, but it's predominantly the other way. They give custody 95% of the time to moms in contested cases. So there's no, if somebody gave a job to a white male 95% of the time, and the candidates were different genders and different people of color, everybody would be screaming discrimination for that. But nobody notices that, and they just assume it's okay because we're dominated by feminism, and we don't even look at anything logically, and we're intimidated by it, and that's why the culture of the court exists. I liken it to There was a culture of the day with women in the early 1900s. They're second-class citizens. Japanese citizens were second-class citizens. They were put in concentration camps during World War II, and judges said that that was okay. Judges violated citizens' constitutional rights, and then black folks had separate but equal accommodations. We think that that's insane. What if we said today, like you walked up to a black person and say, "Get out of the store. There's a separate store for you." That would be insane to say that. But that
Yeah.
was in the Supreme Court in the late 1800s until the 1950s, Brown versus Board of Education. So the court has gotten it egregiously wrong with all kinds of groups of people. And I work with guys about formulating an argument saying that, look, and now you're getting it wrong because you keep ruling against me as a father. We need to undo this culture. You need to look at the scientific evidence and the data and the law and the facts of my case, and you need to rule on that, Your Honor, and stop being caught up like this is the 1970s and Michael Keaton's movie Mr. Mom, or I'm a Homer Simpson, or whatever society thinks about men, that we're fumbling, bumbling idiots, you know?
Yeah, and those movies and TV shows are obviously part of an agenda, and they've gotten worse and worse and continue to this day. Music is all over the place, and now they're having the celebrities act crap out so they can.
And a lot of Hollywood producers and writers, they're feminists, or they're, bitter old women who have issues with men. So,
I'm going to go
and,
back.
and they're lying.
I want to go back to the flow page.
Okay.
Let's see, must see info. Exhibit 1, effects on the brain. Exhibit 2, absent father risks. Exhibit 3, APA journal article regarding 50-50.
Let me stop you there. The APA article, that's a guy who specializes in alienation, another psychologist who specializes in alienation, Richard Warshak. If you just Google Richard Warshak, he's a professor in Texas who has a page full of alienation stuff. And on his page, it says specializing in parenting and stuff and alienation. If it doesn't exist, why is the guy with a PhD saying that? And then the people in court who say it doesn't exist are social worker, guardian ad and a judge with a law degree who knows nothing about psychology. So the biggest thing about that is that paper shows that kids 4 and under do better with 50-50 parenting plans than every other weekend. There used to be a thing called the tender years doctrine, and that's been debunked. It was created in the 1860s in Europe by a feminist when men always got custody. And then the pendulum swung the other way, and women started getting custody, and we've been doing that in America ever since. And the tender years doctrine has been abolished in some states. If you go to South Carolina and type in South Carolina, best interest of the child, custody factors, the first line says the tender years doctrine has been abolished. It is utter bullcrap that a kid under 4 needs a mom more than a father. They bond with the father's voice while they're in the womb if you're around the child. And they have a sense and know that you're the parents, or they have a loving bond with you. They need you at birth and from then on. So I just had a guy go in court, and the judge said, well, that's inappropriate for this 4-year-old to have so much time with you. And he pulled it out of his rear. Here's the science that says kids need it. And that one with the picture of the brain. Kids' brain development is hindered when they don't have loving bonds with the parents. So there's all this science that debunks the culture of the court that's going on now today. And that's why I emphasize people got to look at. And the other thing about it, Richard Warshak is a PhD. At the end of that paper, there's 110 other psychiatrists, psychologists, and child developmental specialists endorsing the paper. So you could walk into court with 111 expert witnesses by bringing that paper as an exhibit. And they'll try and argue it should be dismissed. And you need to know the evidence rules to keep it in. Imagine walking into court with 111 psychologists saying that child needs to have, that 3-year-old needs to be with the dad 50-50. That's what this tool is right here.
Endorsements from researchers and practitioners, all of them listed right here at the end of the paper.
And there's 110 of them. So you walk in, plus the author, there's 111 experts you're walking into the court with, saying this child needs a 50-50 plan unless the mother proves otherwise. Unless we don't believe in science in this court, but don't you believe in science, Your Honor? We shut down the court during COVID. We turned the whole world upside down and looked out for our fellow man. Why? Because we trusted the science. Well, why don't we trust the science when it comes to our most precious commodity in this world, the future generation, children? Why don't we trust the science on their behalf?
Yep. And then what does this one say?
And there are zero articles. There's 0 articles out there that said it's good for a dad not to be in a kid's life. There's none.
Right.
It's uncontested. It's not even debatable.
According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 18.2 million children, 1 in 4, live without a biological step, or adoptive father in the home. That's enough children to fill New York City twice or Los Angeles 4 times over.
Yeah.
And the risk of assault on children, whether it's violence or other types of assault, is like skyrockets when fathers aren't there. So what kind of position are we putting kids in when there's fathers that want to be in their lives? You're risking
And there's a
all.
lot of specialists who've been coming out saying that when there's a step parent involved, or when there's a step parent, child abuse goes up 400 times. Who usually has custody and has a step parent?
The
It's the
mom.
mother's new boyfriend or the new husband. It goes up 400 times because women are not naturally protectors, and non-biological men don't have a sense of protecting kids as much, and predators prey upon single mothers. There's a prolific pedophile who said, and I have the video on my YouTube channel. If you Google pedophile interviewed, uh, who he targets and stuff, he targets single mothers. If there's a strong male threat, he stays. He doesn't even attempt to molest the child. They said, "What type of child do you look for to target?" He goes, "I don't target children. I look to see if there's a strong male threat." The mere presence of a man not doing anything but standing there automatically brings safety to a child. And the
Yep.
number one thing you could do as a parent is provide safety. You can't provide, if you provide love and they're being molested, that doesn't matter that you love them. Safety is number one. Then there's the love and affirmation, all that other stuff. So it's insane that more men don't get custody.
A parental alienation in a child is on par with physical and sexual abuse. And that's what stands out to me as far as there being, kind of an agenda behind this is when you want to destroy the future and control the children, you get rid of the protectors. So all these factors
Right.
say this is why this would, to like what I like to call it, irregular warfare. So this is the damage we're going to get, and then this is what they're pushing for. So what does it say about everything we're doing and why we all need to be, speaking up and taking action, and in the first place, fighting for a court and custody for your kids, filing that contempt, showing up to the court dates, putting the work in. Don't just accept what everybody's saying or people telling you don't have a chance.
Yeah.
This is how important it is. It's
Right.
extreme child abuse and extreme psychological abuse is on par with physical and sexual abuse.
So if a child, like, there's a lot of guys who say my kid's being alienated. I haven't seen my kid in years. I'm like, what have you done about it? Oh, I don't know what to do. Like, did you at least try and go to the courthouse and look for how to fight? No, I just, okay, well, if your kid was being touched by the mom's new boyfriend, would you just sit around and wait and hope that it gets better? No, I'd be doing something about it. Okay, well, what you're experiencing right now, the child is being traumatized just as bad as if they were getting slapped around or touched by the mom's boyfriend.
Yeah.
So why aren't you acting with urgency on this? And that article is actually 2022. And if you click on either one of those authors, that's written by a psychologist and a psychiatrist. So you got the medical side and you got the psychological side. And if you click, every time you read it something, you should look at who the author is and look at their credentials, where they got a PhD or whatever. If you click on those guys, they have other articles about alienation, especially that Blockty guy. And then in that, and when I bring up a paper like this, I say, Your Honor, this is a scholarly paper published in the Psychiatric Times and is peer-reviewed and vetted by other experts with multiple references to other studies of other scholars. It is definitively clear that alienation is real. Now, instead of me saying, well, here's something from some psychologists, I just said it like 4 different ways how ultimately, emphatically true this is because experts said this and experts said that and experts allowed it in an expert magazine, and there's expert studies behind it backing it up. That's the art of painting a colorful picture in court. And people don't realize that I have these arguments and stuff like that because they usually see me chewing guys out and say, grow a pair and be a man and stuff like that. Because if you don't do that, none of these tools matter. So when they see that and they think I'm just some dumb bum who got lucky because my baby's mom was a crackhead or something like that. Like, my baby's mom is black. I had one guy who hated me on TikTok. Oh, you just got custody because your baby's mom's a black crackhead. Well, no, she has a journalism degree. She worked as a billing coordinator at a law firm. She didn't drink or abuse alcohol. She was clean as a whistle. What really helped me was beating her down, going in court in the war of attrition. And when I got the contempt, she was just exhausted from fighting me. And her attorney was embarrassed. Like, I could see him out of the corner of my eye as I was winning the hearing. He's flustered and looking through the paperwork, and he can't find what I'm talking about because I didn't mark his exhibits. I just marked mine and the
Yeah.
judges. so he couldn't follow along as fast. So I did a little trick. The second opposing attorney, he was a totally evil, demonic, psychotic, literally a psychopath. I had a psychiatrist look at some of the stuff he did. He said, "Oh yeah, that guy's a psychopath." One time I sent him paperwork and I disheveled the stuff out of order and I stapled it about 40 times just for the fun of it.
Yeah,
I don't recommend that for anybody, but that's the fun. I told my judge
I get it.
that him and the baby's mom's attorney, they don't like me now and they're tag teaming me because I date beautiful women and they both have hideously ugly wives. I said that in court papers.
Yeah,
And people are worried about saying, "Oh, this is what the law says. You have to do that, Your Honor." And I didn't go to jail for that.
right.
The judge said,
Right.
"Oh, James is mocking our wives." At that point, the fix was in, and it was toward the end. And I got the judge reversed, so he was retaliating against me, and everything we were doing didn't even matter. Like they were
Yeah,
going to court for the fun of it.
right.
So
I get it.
I just threw a jab out there.
Been through some of these types of things in the court myself to the point where, like you said, James doesn't recommend it because you don't want to mess your case up, but at the same time, do not be afraid to stand up and cite what you need to cite and refer to what you need to refer to and
Yeah, if I could
protect your
say
child.
something if I could say something insulting in court and not go to jail for it, you could say on point case law and not be afraid to do it. And the opposing attorney had called me stupid, dumb, an abuser of women after I had full custody of my daughter, mentally ill multiple times, and like personal insulting without actually using cuss word all throughout the court paperwork.
And
And
that's
he
what
got
it
off
is
on
in
it.
court. That's exactly what they're doing
Yeah.
to us the whole time when they file these papers and say all these things.
This is a great argument in court also, but you guys need to watch my video on Civil Rule 11 if you don't know how to combat that. Civil Rule 11 says if you say stuff that's not true and you do it to harass, burden, or delay somebody, that's a violation of Civil Rule 11. And you could get sanctioned or punished for that. Now, they rarely dole that out, but I've had guys who do Civil Rule 11 motions and the attorneys get in check real quick. And then they file bar complaints and they get in check real quick. But the thing with that is that when they're throwing those insults and repeatedly doing that, a great argument is, Your Honor, if somebody attacked me or anybody else with this language outside of this courtroom, that person could get a restraining order. What they're doing is defined as harassment under the law. You've never found anything they said to be true, and they keep lashing out and they keep relitigating that same point. It's a violation of Civil Rule 11. It's a fraud upon the court. It violates 4 different rules of professional conduct. It violates oath of an attorney, and you have a code of judicial conduct obligation to maintain the integrity of the court system. And now this court system is supposed to be the safest place in the world for me. There's sheriff deputies and stuff like that. I should be safe from being harassed and attacked unnecessarily. If they have something wrong that they're truthfully saying about me, fine. But they're emotionally and psychologically abusing and attacking me and name calling. If somebody did that outside of court and didn't have the title lawyer, there would be a restraining order. And the opposing attorney in my case, I took him to court on 2 different times and tried to get a restraining order against him for harassing me because he would call me stupid jackass, a cue ball, bald head, face that could stop a clock, butt effer, and stuff like that on the phone. And so I tried to get restraining orders against him twice. I didn't win. One of them I came pretty close,
Yeah.
and it was a close call. But I just used everything weapon I could to keep him in check, and he hated me. And then so he's probably the worst attorney I've ever seen. And everybody says that about their case, but I literally can demonstrate in multiple ways why you might have somebody who's bad. I've never seen in 25,000 cases an attorney this bad. The first attorney is kind of a pushover. I beat the snot out of him. This guy he had other attorneys scared where I was calling around like, what would you do if you're dealing with this attorney? Oh, I wouldn't even face him. He drives up costs and makes it miserable. He called me at 3 a.m. Where's my discovery? At my home. Some attorneys had stories like that for this attorney. And so he tried to fight me in the court hallway. And this guy would slap his face before a hearing, get all pumped up like it's an MMA fight.
Yeah.
And he was like 60 years old 65 when I first was with him. So anyway, so I've seen it all in the whole gamut and I actually learned a bunch of tricks from him. So
Some real psychopaths in there for sure. I totally believe it. I've seen some
yep,
egregious stuff in there. The child appointed attorneys, a few of them, even though one was attached to my case multiple times. I've seen
right.
some psychopathic stuff. The attorney, one of them, my ex's attorney, would try and stare at me, get his eyes real wide in the courtroom to try to get me to react or something. and stare me down in the court. And then he would tell the judge that I was staring him down in the courtroom or the hallway in the opposite, you know. I've seen
I had the same thing from this guy. He actually, you know how they have pews in some courtrooms, like church pews. I'd go in and sit in the back, and one time he was in the front, and he turned around and he gripped the back of the pew, and he's just looking at me like this, and he literally did it for 5 minutes, and I just looked down in my phone, and I was ignoring him on purpose, just so that like we had video cameras in there. I didn't want it to make it look like I was even looking his way.
Yeah, because some
But
dads will struggle with that and break at that. Don't break with stuff like that. They will try everything.
yeah. And we were in the court hallway and one time, and he said something smart to me. I said, "Do you think you're going to provoke a fight? It ain't going to happen." I said something like, "I'm a lover, not a fighter," or something stupid. He goes, "That's because you're not up for the challenge." And I'm like, "Dude, you're corny with your smack talking.
Yeah.
Like you look like a dork." And then when I found out he was losing cases on purpose for women clients, and when they lost everything, they lost all they had, and he would invite them to live with him. And I said, that's the only way
Wow.
you can get a woman is by doing that. So I started talking smack to him about it, and I did videos about it. I have a video on my YouTube where I'm talking about a few different attorneys that trade sex for services and stuff like that.
Very
And that's
common.
really the way to disturb their bubble is by exposing them. But nobody's doing that. Everybody's afraid to do that because they got them by the balls in their own case. But I was doing this at the point where it didn't matter because I had custody.
Yeah.
I protested my judge in his neighborhood and called him out and talked to his neighbors and tell him what he's really like. So, because these guys live in a bubble. So,
Let me hop back over. I'm going to go back to the flow page again, and then
okay.
anything you want to call out or keep going into. So we just passed some of the journals and articles there. Alienation is bad as physical abuse. So then we have a TED talk here. Female lawyer talks about harm with dad absence. The case for father custody. 438-page book.
That one right there is it's more for like pleasure reading or fun, but that
Yeah.
guy talks early on quoting feminists and their agenda in the early 1900s to remove the father from the family. So it's been
Yeah.
an agenda for 100 years. That's why these fathers' rights groups say, "Oh, we just get together and do one or two things, we'll fix it." This is like overcoming a whole dictator government and stuff like that. Stuff that's been entrenched for years and been planned out for a century. So.
I agree. So this is very good. I like to read books, and that's probably every time I see a book, I have to go try and grab it. But so this is
Yeah.
anybody, and maybe sometimes it takes some time to go back and actually you'll learn more about your case as years go on or what actually happened to you. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't take the time. Like James said, one little piece, one moment, like he used Kobe Bryant getting injured as an example. Don't look at the whole mountain at the same time. Just start with figuring out dates, getting things in order, know your court case number, take a breath and
Right.
start, and you'll be surprised, just like what I learned with reading books, because I fall asleep just like everybody else, and I look at a bunch of books, well, I'll never read that. Well, time kind of gets away when you're just focused, and you'll be surprised how much you can get done, and the momentum of confidence that comes with that when you do it grows exponentially. And then you start getting
Right.
the mindset of, I'm going to win, or whatever it is. And I felt the same with a lot of things I went through in my court case. Even though I got smashed, I kept going. I kept putting time into these things. I would get papers come back in the mail from the courthouse that said, "Well, you filled this out wrong," and I'd be pissed, and I'd have to redo set a whole bunch of packets and stuff and stamp them and do it all again. I just take my time and get it done. There is time to do it. You can do it.
I had that going on. I had that going on early too. Like I said, I didn't get my first court order for 2.5 months after I started the war. And the
Yeah.
war started with the mother trying to get a restraining order against me. So I didn't get, but I just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And I was shocked when I got 5 days a week in my first temporary order because a father's rights law firm told me I'll get every other weekend and that's it. I
Yeah.
got 5 days a week when I was still learning, when I barely knew anything.
Yeah. And so like I'm gonna keep going as long as I have you for a little bit of time. I know you're busy, but like maybe we're a little past halfway through the flow page. Is there anything you want me to
Okay.
jump to specifically, or I can just kind of keep going through these?
Yeah, go ahead and keep going if you want.
Yeah,
I got plenty of time.
I'm here for it. We got the divorce core, 2-minute trailer, false abuse claims, quickie clip of the #1 documentary on family court corruption. Oh, this is interesting. The trailer shows how women lie all the time about abuse. I would quote the lawyer and James saying, I would quote the lawyer and Harvard professor in here. Okay.
Yep. Only
Scholar.
takes 2 minutes to look at it. And
Yep.
in my defense against restraining order packet, I quote about 25 different lawyers, judges, and documentaries and bar associations about how this is a trend that disturbs them, which is crazy because lawyers are saying women are coached by lawyers to go to court and lie. So why don't they do anything to fix anything? They're just writing papers about it. But it's an overwhelming, obvious. If it's more likely than not that a woman's lying about this, in a more likely than not court, preponderance evidence is more likely than not, then it's more likely than not that she's lying. You could even start with that premise.
Mhm.
And so I've had guys who never even got a consult with me and got the defense against restraining order packet and destroyed it. I had a guy who I lost his text, but he had texted me and said, "Man, I went and destroyed them. I was so scared and nervous, and the attorney just wilted for the mom." And he had my packet, and it was like, if you go in there and say this woman's lying, we know women lie about this, it's just you. But if you go in there and entire bar associations are saying this is a problem, and there's
Yeah.
documentaries and Harvard law professors and other attorneys and judges, there's a celebrity judge in that clip too. That is the best movie about corruption in the court system. And the guy who created it, it came out about 2013. He went to Washington D.C. to try and change the system and stuff, and he got slapped down, and then he disappeared. Like nobody's heard from him since then. But this is just, if you don't want to get my packet, at least watch this and quote these people, or do your own research and Google it. David Letterman, the late night talk show host, this lady got an emergency ex parte restraining order against him and she said he was harassing me through my television. He wants to be with me. And they signed off on an ex parte restraining order in New Mexico against Letterman, who's in New York. Now, he sent his goons down at the show cause return hearing and got rid of it. But the fact that they can get away with ridiculous, crazy stuff like that is stuff people should bring up in court. And so, and when you say it again, you appease the court. Like, look, this lady is making a mockery of real women victims out there who are afraid to come to court. She's making a mockery of the women who fought to put these protections in place and using domestic violence as a punchline. That way, you acknowledge that you don't just say women are lying, women are lying, I hate women. This woman is lying. There's a trend of women abusing the system, and then there's real women victims who are afraid to even come to court. And then you give the whole balance so you don't look like you're just attacking women and
Yeah.
misogynistic and stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I just want to get that in there.
No, no, that's what we're here for. And let me go back, switch back to sharing here. Scholar paper: prosecutors bully defendants into copping pleas. Okay. Prosecutors bully defendants into copping pleas. And when I was in there at 22 years old, well, in this case, I think it relates here is that when I was worried. I was like, oh, you're going to go and you could get 2 years in prison for this, for a misdemeanor domestic violence charge in California. I think it's a Penal Code 278.5. I'm not 100% on that. Inflicting corporal injury on a spouse or cohabitant, which is bullshit. The one day I'll go over the actual like report and stuff when I'm more free to. I'm really not right now. Is ridiculous. I should have fought it and took it to trial. Probably would have been fine. Instead, even with a misdemeanor, you lose gun rights for life, lifetime ban. Now, I talked to Daniel Mercury in one of these interviews, and he's talking about how that's illegal and there's processes to appeal that, which is great. But so what this is talking about here, prosecutors are bullying defendants into copping pleas. I didn't have to plea anything, but I was very scared. I had no one support. I didn't know what I was dealing with, and I felt bullied.
The reason, and let me say the reason I have that paper there because there was a debate between two scholars, Timothy Lynch and Timothy Sandifer. I can't remember which Timothy. One guy said that that one. One guy said that plea bargaining is unconstitutional because you waive your right to a jury trial, you waive your right to an appeal. And then another guy said, well, we need prosecutors to have the plea bargaining system because they have so many cases. We need them to be able to resolve them quickly. Well, that's their problem. Why don't they just focus on the murders and the chomos and stuff like that?
Yeah,
They want to prosecutors. Yeah, they just want to efficiently. Why do we have something to efficiently help the state and government go after people? But that being said, the reason why that's in there is because guys will cop a plea to domestic violence, and when they go to family court, they'll use it against them. And so what I tell guys is that when this happens, I would go in there because most of them cop it under duress. They're bullied into it. And so you could go into court and say, I basically copped an Alfred plea to that domestic violence, which means you acknowledge you don't acknowledge guilt, but you think the jury will find you guilty because it looks bad or you're prejudiced. They're prejudiced against you, so you cop an Alfred plea. And as this guy who says we need the plea bargaining system. In his opening paragraph of that paper, he admits prosecutors lie, they abuse the system, they use trickery and stuff, especially if it's a guy who's never been to jail and he's scared to go into jail. He doesn't even have a speeding ticket and he's intimidated by the system. They'll use bullying tactics. So it's an admission by a scholar in the legal world that prosecutors will bully people, and then you use that and say, I got bullied just like that, and I signed basically an Alford plea, and I'm still contending that I didn't commit domestic violence. I was part of the bullying plea bargaining system. So that's part of that's an element to use an exhibit when you're making your defense, that don't use that plea bargain against me. I didn't go to a jury trial. They didn't convict me. I just kind of surrendered under duress. And courts will vacate a mediation agreement or a settlement where somebody was bullied under duress. They'll undo it. So they understand using the phrase under duress. So that's an argument, so that even if you cop the plea, then I'm pretty sure that like 99% of dads cop a plea to DV. I know guys who they fought it and they sat in jail for a while, and then after a while they wouldn't cop a plea with the prosecutor, and the prosecutor just let them go. And one day they just walked out of jail. Because if everybody took their case to trial, they would have to drop 95% of them. Because just like this guy says in the paper, they can't prosecute every case.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if people saw that. Was it Diggs from the Minnesota Vikings who got falsely accused of rape by his cook recently?
I can't
This wide
remember.
receiver from this right. It was just in the news. He just got acquitted, and they had a video of her dance the day he supposedly raped her. They have a video of her dancing around in the kitchen at his house or something, or someplace, when he supposedly did it. And then
Mm-hmm.
they had a text. They had a text from her saying, "I will ruin his life."
Yep.
And there's all kinds of stuff that goes on like that. And the more stories and the thing with that is the prosecutor went forward with it despite all that stuff. And you know why? Because when Joe Biden was a senator, he drafted the Violence Against Women Act, and that has given billions of dollars to influencers and seminars for judges, and to brainwash everybody, into women's shelters, and it doesn't go to anything for men. And when a prosecutor, now I don't know if this is true in every, when a prosecutor, usually when a prosecutor prosecutes a DV case against a man, they get Violence Against Women Act bonus money. So if they spend $10,000 on a case they take to trial, Joe Biden's Violence Against Women Act money will reimburse him. And I say it's his because he's the one who was bragged about it in 1994, along with his crime bill, and they renewed it in 2014, 20 years later. They will get 10,000 matching funds bonus money, kind of like the Title 4D. So there's a Title 4D, but nobody ever talks about the VAWA bonus money that the prosecutors get. And that's why they drop cases against women, because they don't make any money or bonus money from it. In part, besides the bigotry against men and thinking it's okay for men to be victims of DV. But go ahead.
This
I
is
just
a
want to throw those two together.
multi-leveled
Conspiracy.
fortified, yeah. And
It's
this,
like a RICO case or something, and but it's also just the brainwashing and the culture of the system in the day. Just like
yeah,
not every judge in the Jim Crow South was like, I want to eliminate black people, and that's a specific agenda. They were just,
right.
I hate black people, so they got a bad result in criminal court, and the result was the same, as if they're some people are just, they're just brainwashed. Oh, dads can't handle infants, so it's inappropriate to get, like I said, I had a guy who went in there. It's inappropriate for a 4-year-old to be with you 50-50. He didn't say why. It's just the brainwashing, and
Yeah,
that's
you know
why
what comes to
dads can
mind?
go. Huh?
What comes to mind, the funny thing about dads and infants, or how important I would argue that they are, is because and women will set their own trap for this. They're all over postpartum, postpartum, postpartum. Well, then why are you the most important, safest person for the kid postpartum for the
Right.
for several years? And they'll say, oh, it lasts more than 2 years, 3 years. Even though in the beginning it can be serious, but that's what dads are
Yeah.
there for too, to help.
You know what? I had somebody say, uh, um, I think I heard it from a doctor, but this makes perfect sense. Being postpartum, when you go through pregnancy and stuff, it amplifies, the hormones are intense and you're going crazy, and women, they're overly emotional and stuff. A
Mhm.
great argument for what postpartum is, because I know some women who don't believe postpartum even exists because they had such a smooth pregnancy. What
Yeah.
happens during pregnancy, I think it amplifies what's already there. I read the number one cause for postpartum depression is already being depressed. It just
Yeah.
amplifies it way worse.
Yeah.
And so If
I
you're
agree.
and then a lot of women you see who are postpartum, they're the ones who end up drowning their kids in a bathtub or
Yeah.
do something crazy like that because they're
So
postpartum. So
they're
that
already have stuff that's happening. Plus, and then going through being pregnant and childbirth is physically demanding and draining on the body. And so most people, they're not eating very healthy. And so they're very drained. And when, even like if you're hungry and you don't have kids or you already had kids a long time ago, you're
right,
hungry, your judgment is a little bit different. You're a little bit more on edge. And so can you imagine like when you're pregnant for that long, it's like a physical thing plus the like you said, all these underlying if their personal development level, their own vocabulary, their own ability to emotionally regulate themselves is already really
right.
bad, it's going to be bad. And
Yeah, and there's another thing with that. A lot of times when the women are exhausted, who's doing all the diaper changing and stuff like that and waking up in the middle of the night? The men are doing it if they're married or living together.
yeah,
So the men have a history of performing parenting duties, and men won't bring that up because they don't know the laws. And most states say the performance of in Washington is performance of parenting functions or parenting duties or how active you were in the kid's life. And if you go to court with pictures, I actually destroyed the mother's credibility because I was bottle feeding at one time because the mother was pumping milk. And then during the restraining order hearings, they're like, the judge was like, "Well, can you guys make arrangements for the kid while I have the restraining order temporary in place until you go to family court?" And she goes, "Yeah, but he can't have her for more than 2 hours because she's breastfeeding." I said, "Your Honor, look at there's a picture in Exhibit 17 of me bottle feeding her." A picture is literally worth 1,000 words. I
it
destroyed her
is.
credibility. After that, I busted her in open court. She was so overwhelmed by my 40 exhibits or whatever, she didn't remember that picture was in there. I destroyed her on the spot. And
Yeah.
there's another argument that I made, but men have to, if they have pictures, they got to go to court with that stuff and show because the court thinks you weren't bottle feeding, you weren't, and the judge might be like they had a nanny, they're so rich, or the wife took care of everything because the judges are millionaires and their wife was able to stay at home, so they can't even fathom that you were doing all the stuff you were doing. You need pictures going to court demonstrating that, and you say one of the factors that you have to consider is the performance of parenting duties. And I was doing it when the mother couldn't.
I'm so glad we're covering this. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Um, and then we'll have a good closeout here in a little bit too. I got other, special things to say to
Okay.
praise to all this work that you're doing. But I think it is very helpful. We're going through. So anybody that, because there's guys that are going to take the time and watch and listen to this, and it will help them take the action to go to the website and say, okay, I remember they talked about this. I remember they're going to go through it better. Okay. And next up, this is a big one. Women can commit 50% of DV. I would even say that's pretty generous. I would argue they probably
It
do a
is
lot
it is
more.
it is generous, but it's the recorded compilation of like about a couple hundred studies by this psychologist in Southern California that put this together. And he put surveys and studies and questionnaires and things together, all these different things. But think about how many times men don't report it because it's shameful or we don't want to admit it or we let it slide or we tolerate it. I would say women commit 75% of domestic violence. They commit 60% of physical child abuse and 90% of the alienations and the emotional psychological abuse.
Or the
Women are not
murder.
natural, women are nurturers. We are protectors. Even the most knuckleheaded guy I've dealt with will not let anybody touch his own kid because it's just like a lion in a lion pride in the animal kingdom. You could be not such a great person, but you will not let somebody mess with your own kingdom, even if it's for your sake of your ego. But men are naturally protectors. And so women are more emotional than us and they lose their control of their emotions and we can contain ours, especially when it comes to our kid better.
Or
And so,
the statistic of women actually ending the lives of their children is astronomically higher than men doing it as well.
yeah, and women execute and take out their spouse just as much as men. It's hyped up. It's always assumed that men do it, and everybody in society. I see comments all the time on
Not the truth.
on people's page about it. Yeah, it's the brainwashing of the culture. So
I'll add to that too, as far as men won't report domestic violence. Also, I think a ton of the statistics out there, which a statistic naturally goes to the man was a violent one. Like in my case, there was about 3 times until things finally escalated where I would get beat up and then the law enforcement would be called and then say that the only time I was charged with a misdemeanor, same thing. I got beat up that day. The cops were called on me And then I ended up
Wow.
with the misdemeanor charge. So that tells us the statistics says that the male did it when in reality it was the female that was doing it. So all they got to do,
Yeah.
because the man will lose his kids, he'll lose his house, he'll lose his money, he'll lose his reputation, all of his relationships. So they have no interest, especially today when you can see clearly all this narrative, they won't do it. So, but if the woman does it, they're rewarded. So they could get
And you would
into it.
and you would think cops would care more because when a police officer catches domestic violence case and
Oh
they
yeah.
women lie about police officers all the time,
Oh yeah.
they lose their gun rights, so they can't do their job. You
One
think they
thing
would be more
interesting,
cautious about it?
because even realizing the lifetime gun ban thing, I'm like, well, okay, well, what about all the cops that are getting it? So I started researching that, and then I see that cops typically, so they protect their own, they
Yeah.
get pleas to other charges lesser than that, so they get to keep their gun, keep their job, and at the worst, switch departments. So they're actually the only male demographic that's protected. And that, I mean, that means their own representation and stuff, but they have they all know, and they know the importance of, okay, well, I need my gun, I need my job. So they get to plea out to lesser charges like
Yeah.
disturbing the peace, where they're not doing that for all these fathers, and it's the same officers that are arresting people all day. But so they actually get leniency, which is insane. But yeah, they do get accused all the time. Some of them do get trashed and lose everything. There was an assistant chief here in my city that tried to sue the city because it ruined his reputation and everything. It's like, dude, you got to taste of your own medicine. I don't wish it
Right.
on anybody, but look what
Yeah.
happened to you. What do you think happens to all these hundreds of thousands of dads all the time?
And that's the case of everybody's oblivious about family court and false restraining orders until they actually go through it. And then
Yeah,
the audience that people have when they're creating awareness are other victims. So that's why nothing changes, in my
100%.
opinion.
That's a good point to cover there.
Yeah.
Let me go back. Let's keep going on the
Okay.
website.
Okay.
Unless you had something you wanted to say right now too.
No, no,
Go
I'll let you
ahead.
keep going, but you could see how I could talk forever about this stuff
No,
just off the
I
cuff.
welcome
I'm
it,
not,
and I encourage. I think it might be good to get you back on here several times. But
yeah,
I have time here today. This is really good. We're going through this so guys know what they're looking at. What about Troxel versus Granville, U.S. Supreme Court case
that's
at
the U.S. Supreme.
Secretary?
That's in short. That's you can read it, but I have a video on that on YouTube that everybody needs to check out because that it starts with the Constitution, which is the law of the land. It says you have the right to the care, control, and custody of your kid, and the government shouldn't interfere with that unless they pretty much have a hardcore, compelling interest. But the biggest thing in that, it says that we assume that fit parents act in the best interest of children. So if a dad, like the guy I was talking about the other day, the judge said, well, it's not inappropriate at that age to have that much time with the father. Well, the father is presumed by the U.S. Supreme Court to do what's in the best interest of the child. And if you're not above the U.S. Supreme Court, you have to make that presumption. Just like innocent until proven guilty in criminal court, I'm innocent of being a bad parent until you prove me guilty. But it's even more than that. It's not just innocent of being a bad parent. It's we assume you proactively are a great person. In criminal court, they just say we assume that you didn't do this crime until we got proof. They don't even care if you're a bad guy in general or you run around and bully elderly people. If you didn't commit this murder, that's what we care about. Troxel versus Granville says we assume that fit parent acts in the best of the child. If you haven't been found to be unfit by the court, then you're fit. And if you're fit, you do what's best for the kids. So why can't they trust you?
Yeah.
Oh, we need proof. And that's where some other people out there that have books and seminars. Here you go. Here's how you prove that you're a good dad. The assumption is already there.
Yeah, that's what I said.
There's
Laws are already
lawyers out
there.
there saying that stuff. There's lawyers out there saying that stuff. And this is a U.S. Supreme Court case that they don't even know. And they're saying you got to, now you should go in there and overwhelm them with how great you are. But
Yeah.
the burden of proof is the other way around. People got to get this straight.
I'll throw in real quick, like maybe like in my case, so I was looking at, I maybe even brought that one in there, but I think this is maybe where I went wrong is like I kind of had it as a note to where I'm arguing in there, and I verbally say, oh, this, even though it probably should be respected, I'll say I referred to several Supreme Court Supreme Justices quotes and some of these case law where they're telling me, oh, you're not even properly citing case law. Maybe that's correct, but I brought it up in there several times. I probably didn't do it right, but that pissed them all off, and they started stomping me down worse. But I would think that I probably just didn't bring it up properly instead of putting it in the paperwork. I did put some in some cases in the paperwork, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it has to be done right, you know?
Well, when you go to court, this is in general, this is a good short thing for people. And if a lot of this stuff is overwhelming, you could go through all this stuff and figure it out. But your best, most efficient use of your time and money is to get a one-on-one with me. We go right to the parts that you need, so
Yeah.
you don't have to study all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's whether you want to spend the time with and money with me, or you want to spend 2 or 3 weeks, whether you got the time to do it. But the thing is that when you go to court, you're going in a court that's bigoted toward men. You got to act like you're a Jew in Nazi Germany courts right after World War II, or a black person Jim Crow South. You have to overwhelmingly overprove yourself. Number two, you have to thoroughly know the law that they're obligated to remind them and tell them, because they ignore that all the time. Family court is a Mickey Mouse court. Unless you bring up the law, they're not going to care about it. They're going to do whatever they feel like doing. So you want your paperwork together. And then when you overwhelmingly prove yourself with evidence and pictures and text messages and all this other stuff, and what a great guy you are and all this other stuff, even messages from the mom leading up right to the hearing or her restraining order, you have to put on a show with your paperwork. Your paperwork needs to be on point. You have to put on a show and win them over with persuasive argument. But that means painting a picture. Look at how bigoted the court system is. And it's certain, you don't have to say these words, but you have to paint a picture. You can't just go in there and just tell the truth. That's boring and drab and doesn't get attention. You have to have a speech in court that splashes water on their face and wakes them up, because you're the 1 millionth person that they've seen in the past few years, and you all look the same. You're the next deadbeat bum. You have to stand out, and you have to preach from the rooftops. Look at this is what's going on. You have to see this. Look at this, Your Honor, and look at the science. If you give me the parenting plan she wants me to be every other weekend, the science says it's automatically dangerous to the child, and you have a duty of care to the welfare of the child and do what's best for the child. You're releasing children into society at risk by giving them dangerous parenting plans. This needs to be fixed. We need to catch up to the modern recent science, stuff like that, that
Yep.
nobody ever says in court. That's stuff that nobody ever says in court, so the court never thinks of it. If we all went into court and said the things that I'm talking about, we could unbrainwash the court in a couple of years, maybe, or maybe even faster. I don't know, but nobody's doing this. It's still the feminist influence.
1000%. Let's continue. Let me go back here.
Okay.
Bias in family court, published by ABA. Unchecked biases in family law are pervasive and harmful. Same thing. Same thing we're talking
Yeah, and that's something that people can do with that what they want, but they can bring it's an article that was on the American Bar Association. So when you go in there and say you're being biased against me, the ABA agrees. Bam, here's some evidence that you're being biased, and I'm not just making it up.
Very good. Another beautiful picture here. Your daughter said is an adult now. She's grown up, and I love these pictures. They really mean a lot. It shows. And the things I maybe was going to get more into when we kind of close this out is there is a lot of emotion in this, and it's for a reason. This is our protective instincts involved here. So that's why I say that.
Yeah.
I would like to see grace when it goes towards people like James or myself who come off. That's why I related to James. And I'm trying to without bending over for anybody, but at the same time, kind of be careful in the way I do things or say things. But this is why I gravitated just in the past couple of weeks with some of the content I saw and some of the stuff I put out recently. And I removed some of mine in order to go back and say it a little bit different, still get my point across with at the same time as trying to gain a whole mass of support in the same direction. But is that it is serious. It is all serious stuff. This has got us pissed off, and this is why we have some of the things to say that we're saying, or why James speaks the way that he does, because it is absolute. This is war. This is very serious stuff. This is what we're fighting for right here. And as child abuse should not be joked about. We should check the mistakes. We should be able to check mistakes between each other the best way possible. And sometimes that takes trying again, or as we learn and grow relationships with each other. But calling this stuff out, it needs to be able to be said and say, hey, this is wrong. This is wrong here. This is wrong here. Maybe there's sometimes better ways to do it in order to get a better response from everybody. That's hard to do. It takes everybody to come together to address things that way. But this is why. This is where it comes from. All the things that I've been through, that I've got a briefly to talk about here, everything that James has seen. this is why it's important to say that you got to go fight, you know, and so you catch
And
the easily.
people are talking with anger and in rage outside of court and off the record. And then everybody goes in court and pretends like everything is fine and honky dory. How are we going to get anywhere if we don't go and like you don't got to raise hell in there? But like I said, you need to paint a colorful picture. You need to do something different. The single mother experiment has utterly failed and destroyed society. It
Yeah,
hasn't worked. You can confidently go in there and even say that. And but and say these things that are offensive, but it was offensive in Jim Crow South for a black man to say, I'm equal to you white folks. Like they wouldn't have any science or good reason behind it. They would just think, how dare you? Because
yeah,
we have this gang in control of stuff, and how dare you talk to our mafia like that? And you can overwhelmingly disprove that. And it's outrageous to me that we sit back and passively year after year after year sit and wait and talk about coming together and raising awareness, and then nothing happens and those people die out and the next generation comes along and says the
yeah.
same old thing and nothing changes. That's why I scream as loud as I do about the root problem. We need to go in there and do it. We need to get on the offensive. We need to grow some balls and man up when it comes to fighting in court.
Yeah, so there's a difference in everybody that's talking here in this space, and that's why it's important to me. I think this interview is extremely important for, especially to give James a chance to we get a chance here to actually get deeper with James to learn who he is, why he speaks the way that he does, what he really has to say, and it's overwhelmingly obvious, especially like someone as me. I've been in the family court since 2011. I've been through all kinds of different stuff. I've seen a lot of different stuff. This is clearly extremely valuable, and this is why I asked for James' time today, because people need, I don't have all the answers. I need to know where I can send people. I don't want to just mass people together on social media so I get attention or so we can get a place to like uh it's okay to talk. You know, it is an important part for me to get emotional support, morale, save lives when guys are struggling from day to day. But this is an important piece that cannot be overlooked. We need resource and information like what all the work that James has done for so long and has all over this website we're going through together. It's needed. I say that it's needed. I see that it's needed. I see how valuable it is. And I'm glad that we got an opportunity to talk with James today. All this stuff is explained clearly. He's got a level head, no matter if sometimes it may not seem that way on some of the reels. And watch mine, some of mine, and I experiment with some stuff. Some of mine, I might seem like I'm off the rails, even if I'm just responding to some dumb thing some feminist said in a reel, which is a lot of my
Right,
content to draw intention in, which is working. But this
right.
is where it comes from. This is why we talk like this. And me and James do things differently. But I get pretty forward in some of the things that I say in my reels with these feminist responses because they're endless content on Instagram for me. People
Right,
relate to it. And some
right.
people come in and think, oh, well, you just hate women. No, I don't. James has a daughter. I have four daughters. You know, I want
Right.
them to have the greatest future possible. Fighting for fathers' rights is fighting for the future of all these little girls who are going to be the women of the future. We care.
And that's a typical gaslighting, deflecting debate trick, and it's a presumptuous judgment that nobody could possibly know. And that's the society we're in. The quick triggered emotional reaction, labeling you misogynist, hate woman hater, radical. You must be violent. And people tell me, I had a guy. I just posted on Instagram. This guy, he sent me something. I said, dude, don't send me some stupid crap like this. I see it all the time. And he
So
goes, watch your mouth and blah blah blah. And then I went back at him. He said, oh, I can see why you don't have your daughter. Like that's how stupid my haters are. Like I had my daughter, and my thing says how I got custody. He said I don't have a kid, and he thought that I was just another guy ranting or something. So that's when you debate with people. That's how they. And 99% of society is not violent. We just get it. There's a million people in prison, and a bunch of them are innocent. So, and there's 300 million people in America.
yeah.
So it's less than 1% of people who are actually violent. So to assume a guy has an opinion that you don't like and that you just go to the violence thing is insane. You are mentally ill if that's the way that you argue with people and can't have a civil conversation and you're ignoring stats and data.
Huge. One thing for guys that even because I'm going to keep encouraging it, keep building platforms to, keep the awareness going, but also be responsible and realize we have resources like James that we all need to learn from and grow, make it blossom out bigger. but be ready for people, even if it's just day-to-day argument and you're not doing a father's platform or anything, people are going to tell you, oh, you probably did do what you were accused of, or you probably deserve not to see your kids. You got to be ready for that. Don't let it trigger you. It's going to come
Right.
whether you have a platform or not. I get it. I've gotten it a lot. And I've learned I know it's coming a lot. And this one, they didn't even know James has had his daughter her whole life. And they don't even care. But it's a very weak dig to come back with. And it's even a trend I see.
My baby's mom, when she came back, when my baby's mom came back to modify her new attorney, that was super crazy. They filled out a confidential information form that she shouldn't have to disclose her address because I didn't know where she was. And they say, "What's your reason?" And they said James is dangerous to women and children. After I had custody of her for a year and a half, and I flipped that around. He accidentally served that on me. He wasn't supposed to serve it on me, and I used that against her several times after that. But the audacity they had to say that I was a monster, and she never tried to take the kid back, it's insane. It's the twilight zone up in there. And I have a bunch of friends who I used to, people I went to church with, and I did stuff for, and I gave rides to, and gave money to, and did things for. Believed just one sentence from the mother, and all of a sudden I'm a monster. And all those years that I knew them and that we were friends, now they think I'm crazy, and it's mostly women. Now
That's
they think
pretty
I'm
much
crazy just because some woman said so.
Yeah, it's pretty much how I lost contact with all of my family, pretty much everybody. Some of them a little bit over the years, but was really bad in my case. It's not super rare. It's more common the more and more I get in contact with others. But it was my mother driving it out there to everybody. And so like my aunts and uncles, I haven't talked to them in ever. My barely the last couple is my grandparents, and even then they're not that close because my mother's out there just da, 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 da. But even those accusations in the first place, best friends, people I've known my whole life, some of them, uh, one of them I still keep in touch with, an old guy used to be friends with my dad. Every once in a while, every couple of years, he'd be like, "Oh, but didn't you, didn't you make a mistake a long time ago? Didn't you do that?" And I'm like, and I almost cut him off. I'm like, dude, you're still trying to ask me about this. You cannot get this clear through your head that this is the way that this went back then. It's like, why would you even question
I
this? You
actually
knew
had
me your
people.
whole
I
life.
actually had people that I had. Yeah, I actually had people say because my baby's mom, after I got custody, she went on these years of periods of abandonment, and people would say, "What did you do to her to make her do that?" Like some people are just crazy.
Yeah.
Why do you think it was me?
Yeah,
So
just
yeah,
crowd mentality. And there's a trend in social media that I see where people will post it. It's almost like a copy paste little quote script that says, "Oh, be careful getting in an argument with me if you don't have custody of your kids and whatever else." Because I'll go there, and it's like, dude, that's just showing how weak your arguments are and what you're willing to say to somebody when you don't know anything about them to
and
try to get somebody.
everybody knows that there's people who've been in prison who were found innocent later with DNA evidence or whatever, and you just
Yeah,
assume that everybody's guilty based on some allegations in a court where the burden of proof is down here, preponderance of evidence versus beyond a reasonable doubt.
the slippery slope. Let's run back over.
Yeah, you're pretty much at the end because the next
Well,
section after the last one you did, where there's a picture of me and my daughter, it's just links to different states with the law and some resources in states and different countries around the world where I've dealt with people from those countries and got repeats. So and when I get repeats, I'll find something and I'll put that in there because I know it's something people need in those different states.
awesome. Good. Then we made a lot of ground here today. We're just right down to the end. Another beautiful picture. Bless you guys. One of the strongest people I can see. That's why I made it a point to be in contact with James. And James might have even thought like, oh, who's this asshole? When I was commenting a little bit with him or even giving him criticism, and James turned around and he said, "Look, I can take criticism." He listened. A bunch of times I thought, okay, he's probably not going to talk to me again, or I'm going to get blocked or something. But he listened because he knows. He listened. We talked.
I knew that it had to be a misunderstanding because we had
Yeah,
cool conversation before, and
yeah,
I said something you took wrong, and I didn't mean it that way.
yeah,
I'm all for. I mean, I'm hopefully people can see I'm not the a-hole I appear to be in my videos, but I'm raising hell because like when you see a protester protesting something, they're mad about an injustice. That's not who they are in everyday life.
yeah,
That's an issue they're mad about. And this
yeah.
is an issue that everybody gets enraged about. But I'm going to tell everybody everything. The court system is corrupt. We already know that. What are we going to do about it? Whine, cry, piss, and moan? Are we going to try and do something? Because and To be clear, this is not my strategy, what I concocted or invented. There were people before me who got full custody through this war of attrition and getting on the offensive. I just happened to stumble across it because I had my mind made up, not because I'm some legal beast or because I was some super duper intellect. I had my mind made up. I was just going to do everything I could, as bad as it hurt, and I suffered and cried myself to sleep. When I didn't see my daughter the first couple days, I was miserable. It was traumatic. And the lie, I tell people I didn't want to go to my mailbox and read the next thing from her first attorney, who was a pushover. I was so traumatized by the whole thing and caught
It
off guard,
is.
and the way I was treated by people in court. I didn't want to go to the mail. I was like hesitant to check the mail in case there's another motion saying I'm a monster. But I was gonna go through it. And I was willing to lose all my friends and have haters because I wanted my daughter. And in the end, some of that stuff's been proven wrong. People have changed their minds about me, and that's just the normal, real ones. The other ones are just who they are. And that's what people
Yeah.
have to focus on. It was just a choice I made. It wasn't because I was some Superman or something. I made this kid. I'm going all out. And that is the way that people usually win.
100%. Then like what where I which me personally, like I'm quickly ready to keep the best strategy that I can in the direction that I'm going. But I sunk my teeth into a couple of creators recently. I ended up talking to them on the phone afterwards and trying to like get on a common ground because when we have the same goals overall, I want to try and make use of that and push us together in a certain direction. However, a bunch of these people thought I was just recently a huge asshole because I'm coming in, but I with some of the content I made, I'm looking at, okay, this kid's getting abused, and some of these other creators, the best way I would have went back is what I told them on the phone. If I would have said it in a better way is they're simply we have a different perspective. Maybe they're not as aware, but this is my experience of what I've seen, and this is why I'm extremely pissed when I see this. And one of them was just I won't even I don't want to put any bad attention on the creators, but it's a video a father was taking of a 14-year-old, and the kid was afraid to go with his mom. And I'm saying, okay, I get where I see other people saying, oh, it's a bad dad for saying that. You shouldn't put that kid in that situation. But it's like, okay, no, here's a deeper perspective. The kid will be told that he's lying, that he never said it. Dad will be told that he's lying. Kid never said it. The court will say the kid never said it. The police will say the kid never said it. Sometimes dads have to be in this shitty situation and take a video when it hurts and it's not
Right.
good for the kid, but they're desperate. And then, I found an example after that. It may or may not have been the same kid, but these are countless situations. Kid tried to tell his principal at school, and the principal laughed at him in a room, kept him for 3 hours after school, never called dad, but called mom. And mom was the one the kid was saying was abusive. Police officer came, protective services came, all still belittled the kid, gave the kid a ride in the police car to a mental hospital where he stayed for 11 hours in a blue gown, was given no food. And guess who the only one who cared to be there was to pick the kid up? Dad. And so,
Right.
so one of my examples is I'll be told by the court, oh, you weren't there on time. You weren't there. You can't prove it. So, okay, my kids shouldn't see videos out everywhere, live camera crews. However, if I got to prove that I'm there to get a contempt charge to go through or a request for enforcement, I have to take a video. I have to take a picture, and
Right.
then they'll turn around in the court and say, oh, look, he's videotaping my house. He's stalking me. And they got away with that in my case. It's like, dude, so you're telling me it didn't happen. I have to prove contempt. Then I pull the video out. And now you're telling me I'm some kind of psycho stalking a house with a video camera. It's insane.
And
So that's
and
where
even
my
even
heart gets into it.
Yeah, and even if people think, oh, this dad didn't do the perfectly right thing in here, and I did it the right thing in my case, so he should look. If flawed humans are making mistakes, do we punish the child and starve them of a parent suddenly? Like that's insane. That the punishment for you making this mistake that normal human beings might make, or even if you make a mistake out of anger or out of frustration and stuff are people, you know, do they have to be perfectly infallible and respond to everything in a perfect situation? Like the family court is so fake. Like you catch somebody doing something wrong or raising their voice, there's all this anger management bullcrap. And I would question an anger management specialist on the stand or a guardian ad litem who says I got an anger problem. What is your tester barometer? Because if your kid is harmed by somebody, you have a right to be angry. So here's righteous indignation, and then here on the scale is, or the barometer is, a anger management problem or being abusive with it. Okay, so how do you cross the line? Where's the tool? There are no tools. It's all somebody's subjective opinion that they just throw out there and nobody questions it. And people should question people on the stand about that. Where are they getting their barometer from? Why is anger in and of itself, like I would ask the God, is anger in and of itself bad? Yeah. Oh, so what if your child gets harmed by somebody and you're enraged at them? Is that good or bad? Oh, that's good anger. Okay, so there's good
Oh,
anger and there's bad anger. We both can agree. What measurement or tool or psychological evaluation assessment do you use to determine when it crosses the line? I don't know. They don't know. They're just making it up. It's all a bunch of bullcrap.
yeah.
But you got to have the skill and art to be able to question somebody and pin somebody down. And there's an age-old proverb that everybody believes the first story when they first hear it, until somebody comes and examines or crosses what they're saying. And that's cross-examination. That's
Mm.
your right in court. And
The
so
eighth
that's the art of
amendment.
destroying somebody's credibility, coming
Is-
back and picking them apart and getting at the root of, where do you get this from? How do you know? Because they say, they throw out stuff up here and we're like, that's not true because it's not. We don't get to the root of it. How did you come to this conclusion? Because once you do that, 99% of people are full of crap and they just made it up. Or they heard somebody else say it and that person made it up. Or there might be a book about something, but that person made it up and you don't really have any stats or data or realistic stuff. And in the end, what are we going to punish kids for and protect kids from? Because automatic taking the dad out, again, the science says it's uncontested. There's no debate. You take a father out, that child is in danger in life. So what's the greater danger that he poses if you leave him there? None. What can you prove that's greater than this danger? Okay, he physically slaps the child around or he's touched them wrong or whatever. That would be probably the only reason. That's why I say when they pass 50-50 laws, they need to have a criminal conviction of child abuse or being a chomo before they take a kid away. It should be
Yeah.
50-50 period. And
Yeah.
people don't pass laws like that. They leave it to the discretion of the court and we still get the same result even with 50-50 laws.
And you're talking about the punishment, and we're supposed to have I think it's the Eighth Amendment protection, like against cruel and unusual punishment. I've heard attorneys say that in the hallway.
That's a great point I never thought of. See, I learned something new every day. That's
That's
a great
supposed to
point. I've
be.
never heard that point before.
I heard it. I was sitting in the hallway because at this point I'd been through so much in so many years. I was starting. There might be a police officer. Most parents, I'll say that in the hallway of the court, they're scared, they're silent, they don't know what's going on. I was like that. And then 10, 15 years later, I'm in there and people are looking at me like, oh my God, what did he just say? Like an attorney will walk by me, this one asset, he would walk every morning, he'd say, welcome to the happiest place on earth. And I just said, shut up. Why don't you tell your kids thanks for your Thanksgiving dinner
Was he
this
being
year?
sarcastic or serious?
Every day. He was always joking, sarcastic, one of the attorneys. And I
That's
was
not fun. That's not funny. A child trafficking institute is the happiest place. That's not funny.
absolutely. So people were like, "Oh my God, this guy," and it would be me. Because eventually I just told him, I said, "Hey, shut up and tell your kids to send us a thank you letter in the mail for paying your bills." And people were like, "Whoa," you know.
that's that's a good
Or
one.
there's two police officers sitting across because they're rarely in there. You got to pay $275 a day plus mileage to get them to even come and testify to their own report, which I never could pay or didn't even know that I could do. They're
Yeah.
sitting in there, and I said, "What are you guys doing here?" I said, how come you aren't in here all day?" I said that we have to pay
Right.
you to get you to in here. How does that respect when it comes to protecting children here? People are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he said that." And another time, there's attorneys, and I could see them. Sometimes they come from out of town, and I said, like, and it's so gross. The attorneys, they're obviously comfortable in there. They're talking to, if you listen to what they're saying, they're talking about their cases. They're talking shit about their own clients to each other in the hallway in front of everybody. And everybody else is like this. And I stepped in and I said, we have I brought up one of the amendments, and I don't know if it was the fourth or the fifth, or I brought up one of them because this old lady turned to me. She was so nasty. And she says, actually, I'd agree with that. I think the Eighth Amendment's a pretty big one that they violate in here, that a right against cruel and unusual punishment. So that's where that sunk in to me with one of these experiences in there.
Well, the 14th Amendment, you have a right to life, liberty, and property, and it can't be taken away from you without due
That's what I
process.
said to her.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the 14th Amendment, and that's what Troxel versus Granville is based off of. And then they even go even further and say we assume that fit parents do what's best for kids because you create kids. We assume you love your kids like almost 99%, 0.99% of people do. But
Yeah.
life, liberty, and property is your life with your kids. It's been defined under that, under Troxel versus Granville. Liberty and freedom to raise your kids the way you want to, and the government leave you alone. And property, your home and your money. That gets taken away through child support, alimony, and transferred, and all this stuff. If you think about it, the government doesn't intervene and say, hey, you spend time with the kids tonight, you take out the garbage, you pay the bills. They don't interfere with family until it's broken up. So since they don't interfere with families together, you have the same rights and you're still the parents. They shouldn't interfere at all. But then if you don't go with that argument, then okay, that stuff can't be taken away with you without due process. Where do we usually get due process? It's in criminal court. We have a right to an attorney, a right to a jury trial, and a right to a speedy trial. All these things you don't get in family court. So they're taking away a fundamental right without due process. The whole family court system is unconstitutional based on that.
Yeah.
But nobody's gonna get rid of it anytime soon.
Man,
Unless we have an
it's
overthrow
been
of
a
our
great
government that the
interview.
founders thought of.
Yeah, they did.
What's
And
that?
now, so as you're saying, the laws are already there. They're already there. They've already been there.
Yeah.
They're there to protect us. Um, I got to say the things I wanted to say about we have an opportunity, thanks to James's time today, to learn about who he really is and actually sit with them face to face for a while, not catch 30 seconds to 90 seconds of an Instagram reel. This is a good, I'm glad, because and people could be upset with me for giving you the time today. I wanted to be here for the reason, say, hey, let's see. I want James here. I think he's valuable. I didn't have to run this by nobody because, as you said, we don't owe allegiance to anybody. Nobody owns us, is going to control anything we're saying. This is my own decision where I took an
Right.
opportunity to say, I want to talk to this person because, in my experience, this is invaluable information, and the attitude that James does have for a reason to be here. We get to learn. We get to learn who James is and have a long conversation today. So I'm really happy.
Let me say this before I forget, please. When people go to family court, they're so astounded at how awful it is and traumatized that you could walk into court, the bailiff, the clerk, and everybody treats you like scum. The cops treat you like scum. They think you're a domestic violence perpetrating monster, and they take your kids away and your house away, and they kick you out, and you're homeless or whatever. Or you have to go to your parents or whatever. That you want to scream that from the rooftops. How is this going on under our nose? We drive by that courthouse, and they're trafficking kids. You want to scream that from the top of your lungs. And my buddy, even one of my buddies said, after I was first going through my stuff, he said, this is my impression of James. Hey, how you doing? Do you know how corrupt the family court system is? And they do this and that. And they do because I was spewing it like everybody else does. They're in such shock. And that's what people do on all these Facebook pages. All they're venting because they can't believe it. It's the same thing with me when I found out the only way I think people can win, and it worked for me, and I'm screaming it from the rooftops to the community, and nobody wants to listen to me because
Yeah.
everybody thinks you have to have an attorney. You can't do it yourself. I went through it and I tried. I'm like, no, you fought wrong. This is the way you fight. Well, you can't do that because they say this and they say I'm like, are you an idiot? I did it. I show you how, whether you like me or not. If you want time with your kids, why would you not at least listen to somebody who got full custody without an attorney and destroyed guardian items and attorneys and won in the Court of Appeals? That's not a brag. That's a hopeful ray of light for people who are stuck. It can be done. Or I've had people who've gotten custody because they lit a fire under their attorney with my coaching and how to deal with your attorney. And a lot of time, most of the time, the attorneys quit and say, you're too hostile. I'm not going to deal with you because you just
Yeah.
ask them to do a deposition or ask them to go for 50-50 instead of every other weekend. And you push that and they think you're being hostile because you're going against the culture of the court and the brainwashing that they're part of.
That's right. This has been a great interview today. This, for me alone, this is something to go back and take notes with. All of my interviews are important, but some of these, like this category right here, or we got to learn with Daniel Mercury, very educated man, is something that I'll value for the rest of my life in this relationship and be able to take notes here. Now we got a personal walkthrough with James through the entire website. And we've seen the YouTube, we've seen website, and all the social links and everything are going to be linked underneath this video. And
And you can also
anyone,
go to my YouTube channel and type in the hashtag HIGC testimony for how I got custody testimony and see other people's testimonies. And they're not just a name in quotes like you see on websites. You see them saying it in the comments from a social media page where they're with their kids for the past 5 years. So obviously I didn't fake that.
let me put that in real quick. HIGC testimony.
You have to do that hashtag on
Oh,
YouTube.
hashtag. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. You do that hashtag on YouTube, you'll see some of my testimonies. You can see it on
Oh.
Instagram and TikTok, but I keep getting banned there, so I haven't accumulated as much as on YouTube. I first was doing it on Instagram, so I should have been doing it on YouTube, or else I'd have a lot more.
Whole thing. Let me see. I see this. Okay, look, now we got a bunch of them up here. Look at all these.
You got testimonies there?
Yep, I see them all
Yeah.
on your channel. Eight, and it's a
Yeah,
whole
some of them are
hashtag,
dads getting
HIGC.
custody. Some of them, yeah, dad's getting custody, fighting out for sinners, getting 50-50. One guy stopped his kid from moving from Hawaii to Texas. Well, he would have been screwed. Some other people got money back from their attorney. One guy got 6,000 out of his 12,000 back using my demand letter packet. So some of them are emails, some of them are texts, some of them are people on their own Facebook page talking about it or whatever.
And maybe just to bring this all back real briefly before we
Sure.
close this out and final is I saw a video recently. I don't know if it was a recent video, but I saw where you said that there's about 4 steps that you would start with. Does that ring a bell? It's something I think you just shared it on Instagram.
The four basics that everybody should know. And just real quick, that's you need to know when you're going in court. And this is categorized. All the stuff that you need to know is voluminous and overwhelming. But you can put them in 4 categories. You need to know the law in your state. And you need to know, ideally, is a bonus, but really now it's becoming necessary. Case law or higher court precedent that applies. Like I give you guys Troxel versus Granville that applies in every state. That's the #1 case law because it's the U.S. Supreme Court. So you need to know the law, the statutes in your state, the factors for determining custody. You can Google factors, custody, best interest child, and the name of your state if I don't have the link in my flow page and find it. So the law, and you need to know some case law that elaborates on the law, and maybe a dad who got custody because the mother alienated. I have a link in my New York links where New York Court of Appeals say, if you commit alienation, it's so bad for kids that it's a presumption that you're not fit to have custody. So New York State recognizing their Court of Appeals alienation, and it's so dangerous that you shouldn't have custody if you do it. So how is it a fake fraud, junk science? So law and case law, and you need to know the court rules and the court forms. So the rules, there's a million rules out there, but you need to know the family law rules. How much notice do I need to give the other side before I have a court hearing? Okay, 2 weeks notice. So I file the motion, set the hearing out 3 weeks. I give myself a week to serve her to make sure I get her 2 weeks notice. And then she replies 7 days before the hearing. I get response. I get to reply to her response 3 days before the hearing. I got to call and confirm. Those are all rules. The laws are what the court has to consider and stuff like that. So those are the 4 categories of the 4 basics you need to understand. And filling those in, there's a million laws, there's a million case law, but when you categorize them, you have the law, case law or higher court precedent, the court forms, where they are and how to fill them out, and the court rules. And sometimes the rules are broken up. There's rules for the whole state that everybody has to follow. And then each county has extra specific rules because the room for the judge's bench copies of court papers is over here in this court building on the 2nd floor. In this other building, they don't even have 2 floors because it's out in the sticks. So there's statewide rules and local rules, but I just say rules to keep it simple. Rules, law, case law, and the court forms are the 4 basics you need to know.
Thank you. The super
or
powerful.
how to find them. To find them. You're not going to memorize all of them. How to find them.
And then you made a video recently saying that, like, some of the first steps you would take if you got like or you got served for a custody hearing and a protection order. So James has an immediate coaching process for them, and then we did cover the form to respond to a protection order. So these things these are you guys that get hit with immediately. It's a copy paste system. Everybody's going through a lot of the same stuff. So James has these answers right off the bat to get these forms, how to respond to some of these things, or how he would do it, how he did it. Um, that's a video that you recently made. And then one other thing I thought was really interesting that maybe we could cover real quick is what does not happen really in family court is like depositions, right?
Right.
So
Right.
James, we'll go over, it could be a huge tool because then you could get all these questions out of the way before you actually go to the trial and stuff too.
And destroy somebody's credibility. Like if they did an emergency motion and then you do a deposition a week later, and then she admits that she let you have the kid the day before she said you were a chomo or a child abuser, and then you turn
Correct.
around, a lot of times you don't get a question the other side at these hearings. They're not evidentiary hearings or trials. So it's your word versus hers based on some declarations. And you could depose the opposing party, the other declarants, or people write affidavits, or you could depose the guardian liar or an expert witness and say, where do you get that from? Where do you get the idea that I have an anger problem? Oh, so what if I'm angry that I'm not seeing my kid and I miss my kid and I act out of emotion and rage? Is that unhealthy, unrighteous anger? Where do you get that idea from?
Mhm.
And you grill the crap out of them, and then you turn around and go back and have another hearing. Everything was based off of uncredible or not incredible testimony that nobody should be able to believe. They contradicted themselves in the depositions. They lied in front of you, committed a fraud upon the court. Let's do a new order.
Is there anything else that you want to say to close out with? And any other message you think?
I think we kind of covered everything. Um, uh, again, I don't have, now I sell stuff and I sell consults and stuff, but if I was a hustler or a con, or you still have questions about me, look, I went through it. I show you my winning orders. I'm an open book. I do stuff where I even chew dads out for not having the courage to fight for their kids, which is putting me at risk for not having a big fan base. And people should be able to see the integrity that I have, just to be, whether my tone is off or not. I want the truth. When I see other fathers advocates lying that you can't win contempt and you can't ever get custody and you can't do this, I have to be outraged about it, because it's hindering guys from having a chance to rescue their kids. And we're talking about kids. And to take your dad away is abusive. That's why I'm angry, and the system isn't changing anytime soon, and nobody's doing anything about it. And I hear people talking about it, and I've been watching people talk for 25 years. I'm getting too old for sitting around to hold my breath and waiting for the system to change. Here's a way that people can win now. So I'm aggressive about it, but I tell you the truth. And I don't talk like I do in my videos in one-on-one consults for the most part, unless somebody's trying to argue with me that they should get a free consult or something crazy. But and they don't want to pay or whatever. That's happened maybe once or twice. But
Right.
I'm here for the truth and for us to rescue our kids. And if something is a lie or deceptive, or people are giving people cult false information and they're lying, or they're hustling people and charging way more than they should, it's outraging to me, and I speak out against it. And I'm going to speak out. And if somebody wants to correct me where I'm wrong, I'm willing to listen and hear correction. But I'm usually right about this stuff because I've been doing it 25 years, and my radar is up with some of the hustlers. And I don't hate fathers' rights advocates or dads who aren't trying. I'm not here to beat them up, but if you come in my territory and you start saying some bull crap, I'm going to correct it so that people still have hope and they're not following bull crap, so that they can rescue their kids.
Absolutely fair. And that's why, as far as my own radar, I hate that I've gone through a lot, but it also helped me to see a lot of things that are going on, to see things that I think are wrong or need to be corrected. And that's an important part of wisdom, and
Yeah.
James did it himself. If he makes a mistake, if I make a mistake, I'm willing to talk about it, correct it, come to a fair solution and keep moving forward. But there is an importance here to be upset about things that are potentially harming what we're fighting for the most, children. So
Right.
I appreciate all that so much. All the contact links will be here, and then I'll say this: you need to reach out to James, and if you still don't know how, but you somehow know how to reach out to me, tell me, ask me about him. I'll introduce you. I'll send you over to him, and I'll let him know that you want to talk to him. But you got to go talk to him. You have to let him know that you're there. You can't tell him to call you or email you or message
Yeah,
you.
and people will say stuff in DMs on Facebook, and I can't reply because they got a private page, or they make a thing in the comments, "Hey, I need your help." Like, I don't read every comment either. Like my phone number is there to contact me. And
Yeah.
you're not getting anything out of this by promoting it. Like you respect what I do. And like you said,
Yeah,
a
I've
little bit
asked
ago we had
James
a
for
miss.
nothing. I don't
Right.
want a piece of anything. I've asked James for nothing. I will accept nothing. I'm here because I want to help and we need resources and James is a resource. I'm not getting paid anything.
Yeah, and even and again, if people just watch my free videos and I put them out there for people to have, and you don't want to get a consult, more power to you. But to dismiss all this stuff when there's all this information out there from somebody who won would be crazy. And like you admitted earlier, like there was a misunderstanding between us. You could have wrote me off or whatever, and here you are back promoting it even after we had that misunderstanding. So it should be obvious to people that I'm not BSing, you're not BSing. We just want to help dads. And I also work with moms. I just want what's best for kids in the end.
Yeah.
No matter how my tone is, I'm not going to lie to anybody. I'm not going to willfully intend. I might make a mistake, and I've apologized publicly for some mistakes or misjudgments I've made, but I'm not going to lie to somebody. I'm not going to say you can't do it. It's uphill battle, and I'll tell the whole balance of the truth. But when I see other people lying and I know that it's a lie, or they are ignorantly saying something and they don't want to be corrected because it's their ego saying this is the way that it works, or we're going to
Mhm.
win, or we're going to fix the system, I have to correct that so that
Mhm.
people aren't misled
Yeah.
for whoever follows or watches me. So yeah.
Very important, especially for anybody that, because I know a lot of guys are going to watch this. They're watching all the advocates pages. They're trying to learn and this is a good point. I know that they'll make it to the end of this video and I talked about it right in the beginning and many times throughout. This is why. This is what's going on. This is who I am. This is who James is. And they'll be listening. And make sure you contact him, contact me, and we'll keep moving forward as a team. It's a teamwork. It's not about money. I'm not getting paid anything. James is an important part. I see that I have a lot of value in, and thank you, James, for your time today. And I hope to have you back sometime in the future. The Saturday group calls we could possibly put together some time. Maybe James will get some time on some of these weekends to drop in and maybe give a speech or something for a few minutes and answer some questions. That could be pretty cool. And then let guys know, see his face that may have never even heard of him. Maybe we'll have stuff like that. I want some of my guests to come into these calls would be great. And thank you, James, for being here. We'll see you again on the next one. I look forward to it.
Okay. Thanks for having me, man.